Christmas is one of the most widely celebrated religious holidays in the world, and if there was ever a piece that became deeply tied to this celebration, it would be the Nutcracker. Although the ballet by Tchaikovsky is the most widely spread version of this piece of work, we must remember it all started with a short story written by E.T.A. Hoffmann in 1816. With fun music, great characters, and a nice happy ending, who wouldn't love this whimsical ballet adventure? Well, most notably, Tchaikovsky. He wasn't a great fan of the work, and he didn't feel like the short story was the best scenario for a ballet. But that didn't stop the man from composing some incredibly iconic pieces, and the love that so many different artists have poured into transforming the score into a spectacle makes the work greater than the sum of its parts. As for the short story, it follows a girl named Marie in the original, or Clara in later ballet versions, who receives a Nutcracker doll as a Christmas gift from her godfather Drosselmeyer. Even though the doll is a little ugly and rough around the edges, Marie becomes immediately enamored by it, prompting Drosselmeyer to tell the story behind this Nutcracker. Turns out he is really a beautiful prince put under a nasty spell, and returning to his original form involves battling a vicious rat army and conquering the heart of a maiden. This is the story that Nutcracker adaptations usually follow, though some take more liberty with it than others. And during this month, I am going to look at 25 of those. I have collected theatrical movies, TV specials, ballet reinterpretations, stop-motion pieces, CGI works, TV show episodes, and any other footage source I have come across. There are some which were made by big studios and gained a lot of notoriety, and some which have fallen into obscurity as the years went by. Some that are loved by all, and some that are less fortunate. It's a Nutcracker Christmas, baby, and we are celebrating it. Many of these works were actually incredibly easy to find, as they can be watched for free on either YouTube or the Internet Archive. As a Brazilian with limited access to international DVDs, this was a godsend, and I believe it is in the best interest of the general public that we keep these works easy to watch. The reviews you will find in this project are an invitation for you to check out these adaptations too, as there are some hidden gems you might have never heard of, and some pieces that might be worth revisiting if you already know them. Starting on December 1st, I will post one short video per day, going over my thoughts on whatever adaptation has been chosen for the occasion. Throughout this project, you might see me refer to the Tchaikovsky ballet as both an original piece and as an adaptation. That is because, while the ballet technically is a reinterpretation of the short story, many of the works that came after it take great influence from the ballet itself, as if it were the definitive version of the tale, and they even use the music pieces from the spectacle as the soundtrack. Therefore, the ballet is both an adaptation and a formative work for the canon, and each subsequent adaptation chooses which bits and pieces it prefers to work with from both the stage version and the short story. In fact, using the ballet as inspiration is very convenient, as its songs are in the public domain, and thus you don't have to spend a lot of time coming up with an original soundtrack for your work. Which, honestly, I think is a major reason for why this story in particular has been adapted so many times. While some works do get more creative and put their own little spin on these beloved songs, others take a much simpler approach and use the tracks as they are. Either way, you end up recognizing the story through sound alone. When the bouncy ballet music starts playing, you have a pretty good idea of which characters will soon grace the screen. But I mean, aside from the easy soundtrack, another big reason as to why the Nutcracker has been adapted so many times is that people love this story. This sentiment permeates so many of these adaptations, from the most straightforward to the most inventive, and I truly enjoy seeing the many different spins people have added to this narrative. So, I humbly invite you to come along for this journey as I explore as many adaptations of the Nutcracker as I can. This is the Nutcracker Project, a very Nutcracker Christmas. I'll see you tomorrow, and again, and again, and again. The Nutcracker Ballet, the one and only, the one that inspired countless adaptations. I was mildly familiar with the ballet, I knew of its existence, and I had vague memories of watching a performance when I was about 10 years old, but that's about where my recollections ended. Watching it for this December project felt like seeing it for the first time, and it was a very enjoyable experience. The ballet has been performed numerous times, and there are several professional recordings available to be watched for free on YouTube. My goal here was to watch a performance of the ballet, focusing more on the general viewing experience rather than seeking out a specific version or cast. I ended up choosing this 2011 recording by the New York City Ballet purely because it was the first one that showed up when I searched for a video of the Nutcracker. My comments will be based specifically on this version, but the general flow of the ballet should be the same among different performances. The plot here follows the Stahlbaum family as they host an elaborate Christmas party. The kids and adults dance and play together until the celebration is interrupted by the arrival of Drosselmeyer, a magician toy maker with a cape and an eye patch, the most stylish guy of the 1800s. He presents his fantastical animatronic dancers and gives a nutcracker to the daughter of the Stahlbaums, a young girl named Marie. Marie's brother steals the nutcracker and breaks it, but luckily Drosselmeyer is there to fix it. As the party ends and the guests leave, Marie falls asleep on the couch and has a vivid dream where she is shrunken down. All of her toys have come to life, including her nutcracker, and they fight an intense battle against an army of mice. The Mouse King is defeated by the nutcracker, who transforms into a beautiful young prince and gifts Marie the crown that he just ripped off of the dead king's head. Gross. They travel through a snowy forest and arrive at the Kingdom of Sweets, where Marie is presented with a series of dance numbers performed by human versions of candies and flowers. After they watch those performances, they fly into the sky on a reindeer-guided sleigh and go home, I guess? This version doesn't really show Marie waking up or anything. There's not really a resolution. They just have a fun candy time and fly off. This is a beautiful spectacle. The dancing is charming and gives you such a feeling of joy and warmth. The songs composed by Tchaikovsky became almost synonymous with Christmas, and they have a timeless energy that is absolutely admirable. When I was a kid, my family used to celebrate Christmas by going to my grandma's house, and all of my cousins would come and we would spend the night swarming around the adults and playing with our new toys. And this ballet captures that energy so well. It felt welcoming and nostalgic to watch the celebration. My family's Christmas didn't have the presence of a toy maker magician though. I feel like I missed out on that one. Drosselmeyer is such a fun presence in this ballet. He's always messing around with the kids and captivating them with his inventions. At some point, he is entertaining them just by cracking walnuts open and sharing them with the kids, and they are fully on board with this. This is their definition of fun. It's wild. Drosselmeyer has a nephew that takes a liking to Marie, and she seems equally charmed with the boy. The way they represent this is that every time they meet, they share a greeting that is dragged out for as long as they can make it. It truly transmits the impression that these two are utterly enamored with each other, and that they are trying to make the moment last for as long as possible. They don't interact a lot, but every occasion counts. This nephew is the same kid who plays the Nutcracker Prince in Marie's dream, so this really is just a fever dream about going on a candy date with your crush. At least Marie should feel safe that her crush is requited. The sets on this version look beautiful. I'm in love with these Candy Kingdom murals. The snowy forest makes the stage look massive, and the scenario for the house transmits a vibe that is both cozy and ostentatious. They do some fun stuff with the sets too. At the very start of the ballet, Marie is peeping through the keyhole while her parents decorate the tree in the other room. And the way they show this is that they have a screen with the closed doors. And when Marie leans in to look, the lights on the back shine through the screen, making it appear transparent, as if we too are sneakily watching the parents. When Marie has her dream, they obviously can't shrink the kid, so instead they make the tree grow higher and higher, making the dancer look tiny by comparison. And before that moment, you really had no idea that the stage could be that wide. Making the dream set so much bigger than the house ones also helps give the idea that we are entering a magical land, a spectacle that is larger than life. The one thing that caught me off guard were some of the costuming choices during the second act. The idea is that Marie and the prince are watching different dance numbers performed by sweets from all over the world, and some of these translate really well. You have the rich brown for the hot chocolate, the striped vests for the candy canes, but then you get the, Chinese stereotypes for the tea. And this belly dancer outfit that I could not for the life of me understand what she represented, until I rewatched the opening credits and realized she's supposed to be coffee. But even then, I like the second act more than the first one. The dance numbers are more diverse and elaborate, and they're really fun to watch. Right at the start, the prince has to recount what happened at the beginning of the dream to the other candy citizens, and he does so entirely through silent dancing. It's incredibly entertaining. There's these little meringue-looking angels that are just gliding through the stage. I don't know how difficult that is to pull off in terms of dancing, but they are pulling it off. It's like they're each mounted onto a Roomba. Overall, this is a beautiful ballet that greatly succeeds at what it set out to do. I recommend it to anyone who's just looking for some pretty dance numbers to watch. After this jolly Nutcracker Christmas, it's safe to say we are off to a great start. The Nutcracker and the Four Realms. It's Disney's live-action take on the Nutcracker tale. I remember that when this one came out, everyone was drawing parallels between this and those Tim Burton Alice in Wonderland movies. And I can definitely see that, but I don't think it's fair we judge it solely as an Alice wannabe, even because this movie looks much prettier than the Burton ones in my opinion. But is the story any good? Let's take a look. In this movie, we follow Clara, a young woman with a knack for inventing who is dealing with the loss of her mother. She gets invited to a Christmas party thrown by Drosselmeyer, her godfather and fellow inventor, and while searching for her gift, she stumbles upon a magical world with all sorts of curious inhabitants. This world is divided into 4 realms, but legend has it that the 4th realm tried to attack the other 3 and has since been ostracized from the rest. With rumors that the 4th realm plans another strike, it's up to Clara to lead the magical denizens and help them defend their land. There's dancing, fighting, excessive CGI, pretty dresses, and even a ballet interlude. You know what's barely in this though? The Nutcracker. Yeah, there's a lot of Nutcracker missing in the Nutcracker and the Four Realms. There technically is a Nutcracker, but in name only, because he's just a regular looking guy. Nothing about him says Nutcracker to me. He just looks like your typical toy soldier. But Clara looks at him and calls him a Nutcracker, and we're just supposed to buy it. but he doesn't really do anything. He's just sorta there to follow Clara around. At the end of the movie, there's a part where he's supposed to be kicking and fighting and really proving his worth, but the movie shows him talking about it more than actually doing it. And it's not the guy's fault. This movie has some weird editing and pacing. Certain scenes sometimes just come out of nowhere, the dialogue is weird and stilted and feels like it's not progressing at all, some characters don't really have a purpose in this film, it's all kind of a mess. The movie has the right vibe. It understood the assignment and really tried to create a magical land of sweets and snowflakes where toys come to life. But the story is all over the place. There's this whole thing with how Clara's mom had discovered the land before her daughter and was actually the queen of the realms before she died, but then it turns out that the mom apparently created all of the inhabitants of the land because she has a machine that brings toys to life. And I kept waiting for there to be some sort of explanation, like the machine runs on imagination or something, but no, it's very literal. It's a real machine that can give life to toys and also take it away. Does that mean that the mom built the realms themselves from scratch, or did she just populate them? And where did she get them any toys anyway? The movie just feels like it's building a lot of ideas up, but doesn't exactly know how to tie off those loose ends. Drosselmeyer is there, and just kinda has a whole magical dimension hidden inside his house, and also he was the one who raised Clara's mom when he found her as an orphan, and it seems like there's some big connection there, or some explanation that makes it all click, but the movie never gets to it. Clara and the Nutcracker try to have a thing going on, but it rings very flat. They don't share any meaningful dialogue or spend much time together aside from running around the realms. So when they have to say goodbye at the end, the movie tries really hard to convince you that this is an emotional scene, but I couldn't bring myself to feel much. And the last shot we see of the Nutcracker is him looking all sad that Clara's gone, and it almost looks like he's going to say something, but then gives up. And the movie gives him no closure. He's just left there hanging. I don't know if they were hoping for a sequel to tie up those loose ends, or if they wanted this to develop into some sort of expanded multiverse. I mean, everyone was trying to do that back when this film was released. And there was potential for it. Maybe they would explore the other realms more too. But they didn't end on a cliffhanger or anything. The plot wasn't exactly demanding a sequel. We are left with a bunch of unanswered questions and no real call to answer them. There's a villain, and there's a twist villain, and it's really annoying how inescapable those feel nowadays. Their motivation is very weak and doesn't really justify the calamity they bring in this story. As for Clara herself, she's not exactly likable either. In fact, there are some moments in the movie where she comes off as downright vicious, like when she's threatening to kill a mouse or when she's barking orders at the soldiers. She's supposed to be brave and a strong leader and not like other girls, but most of the time she just acts completely self-entitled. What really saves this movie for me though is the aesthetics. I love the way this film looks, I just want to eat it up. The costumes are really pretty, and it always brought a smile to my face whenever Clara stepped into the scene wearing a new ball gown, or when a new character was introduced. I love these designs, I love these settings, it's a beautiful movie. I really wish this had a story that was as good as the visuals. It's hard to overlook this factor when this film takes itself so seriously, like it's supposed to be an epic narrative that takes the viewer through fantastical kingdoms and mind-blowing plot twists. It's not. It's just a pretty Nutcracker movie, with barely any Nutcracker in it. I recommend you watch this one without paying too much attention to the story. Just zone out and let the visuals take your hand. Or watch it with a friend so you can poke fun at it while commenting on how beautiful the costumes are. It's a feast for the eyes, but your brain might be left wanting more. Welcome to The Nutcracker, the untold story, also known as Nutcracker 3D. This is a movie that is kind of infamous for being simply universally hated. Whenever I see a situation like this, I try to go in with an open mind and look for things to love even when the movie is a mess. I think it's easy to hate something just because everyone else says you should hate it, so I really try to give it the benefit of the doubt. In this case, unfortunately, there's nothing to love. The critics were right. The movie follows Mary, who receives a Nutcracker doll as a Christmas gift from her uncle Albert. As in Albert Einstein. The figure of Drosselmeyer is replaced by the real-life physicist Albert Einstein. This is already a baffling choice. When I think Albert Einstein, I think more of the theory of relativity or the atomic bomb, and not really whimsical uncle whose enchanted toys come to life. And then the movie continues to make this weird by having Albert talk directly to the audience through the camera, but only sometimes, and he's the only character who can do that. And then they have him show up in the magical toy world for like 1 second with no explanation as to how. And they have him sing not only about his theory of relativity, but also about the magic of childhood. Oh yeah, this movie is a musical. But it's very easy to forget that. The songs are pretty sporadic, and they sometimes use the melodies from the original ballet, and sometimes don't. And I don't think a single song lasts over 2 minutes. The characters show up, sing like 2 verses, and then forget this is a musical too. Most of the sets look cheap, and when one of them manages to look impressive, it's still downright ugly. This is a gritty realism retelling of the Nutcracker, where the Rat King is burning children's toys to keep a permanent cloud of pollution surrounding his city. So everything looks ugly, and grey, and grimy, and smoggy, and I don't want to spend any more time in this world. The Nutcracker himself is actually a young prince under a spell, but he spends most of the movie in Nutcracker form, and what an ugly little Nutcracker he is. He has these bulging round eyes and bald spherical head that makes him look like a messed up version of Roly-Poly-Oly. They gave him this annoying squeaky voice and an absolutely insufferable personality. It's straight up incomprehensible how Mary manages to grow fond of the guy. To make things worse, this movie is a feast of uncanny valley moments. Mouse people with scrunched up noses and terrible wigs, weird monkey guy in a suit, fleshy fingers attached to wooden hands, unhinged toothy jaws chewing through metal, giant toy dolls with soulless black eyes. They just sucked the whimsy out of everything and replaced it with nightmare fuel. You can't go 2 minutes without wincing at something creepy. The choices this movie makes are really confusing. The story is set in World War II times, or at least I guess it is, because Albert Einstein is there, but then they have the Rat Army dress and act like real-life Nazis. I don't think I can say the word on YouTube. Rat City is a place in the clouds, but also under the chimney, but you can also reach it through a mirror. There's this guy called the Rat King, but there's also the Rat Queen, but she's actually the king's mother. All of the toys come to life, but only like 5 of them have a personality. Under the care of a different movie, one which was guided by fun and play, these inconsistencies could actually be part of the enjoyment. But this is no such movie. It's trying to take itself too seriously, so when it presents us with a rather unserious concept, it doesn't spark interest, it just brings more frustration. The rules of the world are supposed to be dreamlike and work on emotions instead of logic, like how Mary can break the spell despite having no magical powers simply because she believed really hard, and I'm usually into that sort of thing. But here, everything else is so grim and mean and dirty that I could not get attached to this world. I had to finish this movie in 2 sittings because halfway through it, I was just that bored. I realized I didn't care for these characters or their struggles, even though I was trying to. It's not even a so bad it's good movie, it's just ugly and boring. Sorry I have to be mean to this one, I'm not usually one to do it. I try to find good things in movies and stuff, even when the stuff in question isn't my cup of tea, but I just couldn't get into this one. I've seen other people clowning on this movie online specifically because of how infamously hated it is, and I say, good. This movie is bad. I wish this story had remained untold to me. The Secret of the Nutcracker, a Canadian made-for-TV film from 2007. Okay, so nothing happens in this movie. If you go into this movie expecting things to happen, like we're going to see a 3-act structure for the plot, or like the actions of the protagonist impact the course of the narrative, you are going to be disappointed. But I say this with love in my heart, because this movie won me over. It's a very emotional film, in the sense that it's not so much about what's happening, but instead about what it's making you feel. The first half of the movie follows a Canadian family preparing for Christmas, trying their best to keep the holiday cheer alive even as the father is held in a prison camp in Germany during World War II. When the oldest daughter, Clara, is coming back from an errand, she is followed by Drosselmeyer, a man who seems oddly familiar to the girl, although they have never met before. The movie is trying very hard to sell this as a whimsical situation, with the swelling music and the stunningly warm performance of the actor playing Drosselmeyer, but it's hard to overcome the strangeness of the scenario at first, because you don't know if this man is actually good. He says he's good, but he is a stranger who keeps trying to get closer to this 12-year-old girl while being guarded by 4 shadowy figures who only speak in squawks. I am definitely not as trusting as Clara is here, and the things Drosselmeyer does are hauntingly benevolent. He is invited to dinner since his kindness has utterly charmed Clara, and when he meets the family, he gives them extremely intricate and personal gifts, like giving the mother a music box replica of her wedding and giving Clara's siblings a toy tank and warplane, with those vehicles being exact copies of the ones the father is known to pilot. There's a sense of both warmth and dread permeating these scenes, and the movie knows it, with Drosselmeyer making cryptic comments about how Christmas is a time for both joy and grief. The family can't help but trust this wizard, and they don't know why. The second half of the movie is a long dream sequence where Clara has intense visions of fighting monsters in the woods, meeting her father at the camp where he's being held, and dancing with fantastical creatures. It's just scene after scene of things happening, but the plot isn't really moving forward. There is no plot. It's not that kind of a movie. This adaptation is a lot more deliberate in its musical influence, with several ballet sequences popping up to accentuate certain scenes or feelings. The very structure of the story closely mirrors the original ballet. You have a family Christmas in the first act and a vivid dream sequence in the second one. There is a Nutcracker, and he's made of dated CGI, but he also shows up in Clara's dream world, and the movie is able to convince us that they share a connection even though they never utter a word to each other. There's this beautiful scene where Clara dreams of this dancing hall with humanoid bird creatures, and all she does is share a glance with her Nutcracker, and I was fully engrossed by the atmosphere they had created. I will admit though, it took me a while to get there. For the first half of this movie, I was often asking myself when the story would kick in. This is why I gave you that warning at the start of this video. I feel like if I had been told from the get-go that this movie is more about the vibe than the narrative, I would have been able to lose myself in the film's fantasy a lot quicker. This is not the flashiest movie, or the most conventional, or even the most cohesive. But there is a charm that permeates every corner. It really does feel like a dream, where you can't tell exactly why things are happening or how you got there, but you just accept the strangeness as it comes, because there's something within you telling you that this feels right. I left the movie with the feeling that Drosselmeyer is like a recurring point of view character, like Benoit Blanc from Knives Out. Drosselmeyer shows up, he confuses and blesses a family at the same time with his extravagant and uncanny gifts. He follows their dreams as they process the burdensome feelings that weigh on their hearts, and then he leaves to find a next family to bewilder. There was nothing special about this family in particular, or about Clara of all children. But because Drosselmeyer chose to visit her, we experienced a vivid portrait of her conflicting state of mind, where the ache of missing her father coexists with her wish to keep believing in magic and happiness. The result is messy, but also beautiful, and shows her inner strength with poetry and imagination. It's not a movie for everyone, but if you feel like it might be for you, then definitely check it out. Dream a little dream of a funky owl wizard and let your feelings do the talking. I didn't know I needed this, but I definitely did. By the Hallmark Movie Channel, this is the Nutcracker Christmas from 2016. This advent calendar entry falls into the category of media that is about the Nutcracker instead of an adaptation of the Nutcracker story. So instead of following the tale of Clara and the Sugar Plum Fairy, we are following the story of people playing those parts in a ballet production. Like many other movies on this collection, this one can be watched for free on YouTube, so we can all bask in the glory of the 2 whole pixels available in this footage. I feel like it adds to the charm. Meet Lily, a yoga instructor from a small town who has been raising her niece Sadie ever since her sister Beth tragically passed away. Sadie has been training to be a professional ballet dancer and gets invited to join a ballet company in Philadelphia. Lily is nervous about the move, mostly because she herself has a history with ballet. After training her whole life, Lily was cast in the coveted role of Sugar Plum Fairy at the New York Ballet 8 years ago, which had been her dream ever since she was a kid. However, on the night of her debut in the role, she got the news that her sister had died and ended up leaving the company to be with her family. Facing the dancing world once again is tough enough for Lily, but Cupid has a special surprise for her. Sadie's new dance instructor is none other than Mark, Lily's ex-boyfriend and former dance partner from her New York days. This is how I am presenting the story to you, which is how I would have done it if I had been in charge of the movie. That way, we would get to gradually unravel Lily's past as a dancer as she opens herself up to Mark and to the world of ballet once more, with the real reason why she left the company upon hearing of her sister's passing being left as a mystery, the one true obstacle standing in the way of her romance. This is not, however, how the movie presents this information. In the actual film, we get like a 20-minute prologue narrated by Lily showing us her life story, starting as a kid being encouraged by her sister, working her way into the ballet world, dancing for the New York company, and so on and so forth. It's too long of a prologue. The events move too fast, so we don't have time to take anything in before more information is thrown at us. At some point, I was wondering if the whole movie was going to be told through Lily's narration. The story only truly begins when Sadie gets to Philadelphia, and I wish we had just started the movie there and revealed the bulk of the backstory throughout the rest of the film. But once the actual story gets going, it's a Hallmark Christmas film. Mark is a caring teacher and a terrific dancer and absolutely irresistible, according to the film. And Lily tries to play it tough and keep her distance, but Mark slowly etches his way into her heart and into the family she has built with Sadie. It's sappy, it's cozy, and it plays it absolutely safe. The wildest part to me is when Lily hears that Mark served time in the army, which is new to her because he hadn't been in the army back when they were together. And then, when she talks to him about it, he reveals that he joined the army because of their breakup. Fellas, have you ever been so heartbroken you joined the frickin' military? Lily is also asked by Mark to help coach some of the dancers of the company, since she's had experience with dancing professionally, but no mention is ever made of her actually getting paid for this. She is providing the service as a favor, and later dances in the ballet as a favor as well. This just isn't right. Lily should be fairly compensated for her services, no matter how hot her dance partner is. At the end of the movie, there is an actual presentation of the Nutcracker Ballet, and we get to watch some pretty competent dancing. I thought they were going to shy away from the ballet part of the Nutcracker because the focus would be on the romance, but no. They got some actors who could actually dance, and they put on an actual Nutcracker performance. Frankly, I should have given them more credit. This movie is what it is, and I can't demand it be anything more. I may have my qualms with how the story was presented, but at the end of the day, they just wanted to give us a sugary sweet romance story between two conventionally attractive heterosexual dancers, and that is exactly what they gave us. If you're in the mood for it, I say give this one a chance. It wasn't nearly half as boring as I was expecting it to be, and I say this as a compliment. Much like Lily found room in her heart to love romance and ballet once more, maybe you too can find room in your heart to love a Hallmark Christmas movie. Have you ever wanted to watch the Nutcracker story told with beautiful yet unsettling stop-motion animation? Then you might be interested in the Japanese-American production Nutcracker Fantasy from 1979. I should preface this by saying that I am a stop-motion appreciator, as not only the format provides a wholly unique way of telling a story, as it is also a display of extreme dedication and skill. However, the style shown here didn't really do it for me. It took me a while to get used to it, and by that I mean I only learned to fully appreciate it when there were like 10 minutes left in the runtime. I can't really explain what feels off about it to me. I think it's just a matter of personal preference. The character designs are really charming and the sets look wonderful. But then the little dolls start moving and they're all stiff and jittery and they gave me the heebie-jeebies. And I don't often feel that with animation. So really, if this kind of stuff doesn't get to you, you will have a much easier time enjoying this production than I did. But enough about the stop-motion elephant in the room. What about the story? The movie begins not with the Nutcracker, but instead by our narrator Clara telling you about the Ragman, a terrifying night-dwelling wizard that scurries through the streets looking for misbehaving children. If he catches you past your bedtime, he will use his nefarious powers to turn you into a mouse. The Ragman does not play any role in the story and is not brought up again after this introduction. Am I missing something here, or was that really just random? Our story really begins when Clara finds a Nutcracker doll belonging to her uncle Drosselmeyer, and soon finds herself in a dreamlike haze, watching as a gang of mice try to take the doll away. She is confronted by a disturbing two-headed mouse queen, and passes out in fear as her Nutcracker defends her. On the next day, she wakes up in bed weakened by a raging fever, but barely has any time to wonder if the events of the previous night were a dream or not, because as soon as she is up, she wanders off into the grandfather clock in the living room and finds herself in a magical land made of toys and sweets. There, she learns of a beautiful princess that was put under a nasty spell, and joins the kingdom in its efforts to free the princess from her curse. The plot has its ups and downs. It's more based around the original short story rather than the ballet, and I like it how they insert Clara as an agent in the process of lifting the princess's curse. Usually, we have Clara just hearing about this tale when she is told about the origins of the Nutcracker, But now she gets to play an active part in the process, which makes it for a more dynamic retelling and creates a more compelling character. However, this adaptation is more about the joys and quirks of stop-motion animation than it is about action. The pacing is rather slow and a bit meandering at times. For example, there's this whole bit where the king gathers wise men from all corners of the world so that they can each propose a way of breaking the spell, and it drags on for a while. It's a weird parade of racial stereotypes and escalating kerfuffles, and if you're not utterly captivated by the character designs and animation style, then it just becomes a bit of a drag. There's a fortune teller character that just straight up tells Clara what to do, so the whole bit with the wise men feels even more disjointed, and it also takes away some of the stakes by having a character who just happens to know everything. There's also a part where the king tells Clara about a battle they had fought against the Mouse Queen and how they lost because their wind-up toy soldiers could not last the entire fight. But later on, the king plans to launch a new attack on the Mouse Queen and decides to use the same kind of toy soldier for some reason, despite knowing they are going to fail. So really, if you come into this film looking for plot or logic or adventure, you're not exactly going to find it. So what can you expect? Like I said, the focus is more on the animation and the design of the world itself, which is rather beautiful. There is a lot to be admired here. But if you're put off by the animation like I was, there isn't much of a saving grace to be found. Except for the music. The music slaps. It's got a great ABBA-like 70s feel and adds a lot to the atmosphere. Seriously, go listen to the Dance of the Dolls track and tell me I'm wrong. If this sounds like your kind of thing, then please check this one out. There's a lot of charm and care to it, and it's a fine addition to the list of Nutcracker adaptations. But if you're put off by the animation, there's not a lot else there, so maybe just go listen to the soundtrack instead. Who better to bring us a Nutcracker adaptation than the Russians, the guys who brought us Tchaikovsky? And who better to ruin this than the English, the guys who brought us imperialism? I'm kidding. What I mean by that is there's a Russian version of this short film with just the music, and there is an English version with added voiceover. I strongly advise you to get the original version, as the animation is perfectly capable of transmitting the feelings and story to its audience without the need for added voices explaining everything that's going on. However, the English voiceover version has better footage, so what you should do is play that one on mute while listening to the sounds of the Russian one. That's what I did anyway. But I don't know if I'm allowed to use the remastered footage here, so you're all stuck with the bad, pixelated video. All the more reason for you to check out the original upload after you're done with my content. This is The Nutcracker from 1973. Our story begins with a bunch of spoiled children mistreating a Nutcracker doll during a Christmas party, while a poor young girl watches from the sidelines. Once the celebration is over, it's up to her to clean the halls, which gives her an opportunity to connect with the wooden figure. The Nutcracker, which is alive, tells his sad origin story. Long ago, he was the prince of a prosperous kingdom, but he was cursed into this hideous form when his father killed the Mouse Queen, who cast a nasty spell as revenge. Her son, now king of the mice, vows to avenge his mother, and just as the Nutcracker finishes telling his tale, a rat army swarms into the room, ready for battle. What follows is a thrilling fight between toys and mice, with the young girl getting caught in the crossfire. She is shrunken down to the size of a Christmas decoration, feeling more helpless than she did before. But just as all seems hopeless, she strikes the final blow, slaying the Mouse King and breaking the curse. The Nutcracker then turns into a stunning lesbian, and he takes her to his kingdom, where they can live happily ever after. What a beautiful rendition of the Nutcracker tale! The animation is the true star here. The character designs are so fun and expressive. There are so many different textures and bits and details to admire. The blocky design of the cursed prince is contrasted wonderfully by the soft and curvy features of the girl who so deeply cherishes him, making it all the more satisfying to see them get together in the end, both looking magically human, showing how much they are kindred souls. There's a certain Cinderella aspect to this adaptation as well. The poor young girl forced to clean the halls while all the other children get to celebrate, dancing alone with her broomstick because she's really got no one else in this world. It makes her connection to the Nutcracker even stronger, as he too lost his kingdom when he was cursed, meaning he also has no one else he can count on. They thrive because they found each other and rely on each other, even when everything else seems to be against them. The music is, of course, taken from the Nutcracker Ballet, and one bit where they played the theme from Swan Lake, which was kinda weird, and it's illustrated wonderfully by the charming animation. There are funny moments, tense battles, and poetic dance sequences all synced to the music. I also want to praise the sound effects, specifically the ones used when the mice are sneezing to death. It sounds absolutely haunting. I don't know how they did that, but man did they pull it off. If you're up for some stellar animation, give this one a chance, and let a little Christmas magic into your afternoon. Music time! Or I think that's what the program is called. The truth is, I found this one because I had googled so many Nutcracker adaptations while compiling the list for this December project that YouTube caught on to what I was doing and suggested this one to me. And I'm glad it did, because I don't think I would have found it otherwise. Apparently, there was this BBC show called Music Time that aired in the 1970s and 1980s, teaching singing, instrumentation, music theory, and other things mentioned in the Wikipedia page for it, and they made a Nutcracker episode, which is what we are watching today. But before we get to the main event, these two people are going to teach us a thing or two about singing. They present us with two songs, as the man plays them on the guitar and the lyrics appear at the bottom of the screen, inviting the viewer to sing along. I quite enjoyed this segment. It has a calm and welcoming vibe to it, very cozy and laid back. I immediately trust these two, and I'm excited to watch their adaptation of the Nutcracker. This one is also told with puppets, but unlike the previous time that happened, this one does not creep me out. I think in part that's because the puppets don't talk in this iteration, they just move their heads a lot while the narrator tells us what is happening, a la Thomas the Tank Engine. I think. I haven't watched that in a billion years. It is a very straightforward telling of the original short story, accompanied by the music from the ballet. There's a Christmas celebration at Clara's house where the girl and her brother Fritz are given wondrous gifts by their godfather Drosselmeyer, but the item that truly catches Clara's interest is a Nutcracker doll sitting upon the tree. I gotta say, this is the worst Drosselmeyer design I've seen so far. They usually make him look all cool and mysterious, sporting a flowing black cape and even an eye patch at times. But here, he just looks like a priest. He looks like he's wearing pajama pants and a tailcoat. It's a good thing he's so talented, because this man could not depend on his looks to sell his craft. In order to distract the children, Drosselmeyer tells them the story of the Nutcracker doll he had brought to the party, which is told as a storybook illustration slideshow with a drawing style that reminds me a bit of stained glass windows. He tells them of a princess who was placed under a terrible curse, broken only if a brave young man were to crack a particularly tough nut. A prince manages to do it, but as he backs away, he steps on the Rat Queen, who places him under a spell as revenge. He is to be transformed into a measly nutcracker, now owned by Clara. At night, the girl witnesses her doll taking part in a furious battle against an army of mice, and the Nutcracker skillfully defeats the son of the Rat Queen, breaking his own curse and transforming once more into a beautiful prince. He takes Clara to the land of sweets, where she is to be crowned a princess, and all the sweets dance for her. Okay, they run out of budget for this part. It's just some candy jars slightly moving in a circle. There's a bunch of what I am assuming is licorice, aka the worst candy, making some geometric formations seen from top down, and that's it. It really puts into perspective how dull the second act of the ballet is if you don't have all of the diverse dancers pirouetting across the stage. The concept of the sweets dancing for Clara falls absolutely flat the second you must rely on actual sweets. There's a homemade feel to this part, which is different from the rest. The sequence kinda feels like something some guy could shoot in his basement using his grandma's candy dishes. Is it quirky enough to be charming? I'll let you be the judge of that. Then, the movie wonders if this was all happening, or if it was just a dream Clara was having, and we're done. This has been The Nutcracker by Music Time, 1982. I personally don't like it when we end on the dream. I'm very much a fan of the sequences where we meet the Nutcracker in real life, either as Drosselmeyer's nephew or as a random character who just so happens to look a lot like the human Sona of the wooden doll. The open end feels like a bit of a cop-out to me, but again, that's just my own opinion. I'm sure someone out there will argue that the dream open ending leaves more room for the imagination or something. Well, this was fun. I feel like I would have enjoyed that if I caught it on TV as a kid in 1982. I'm glad this was recommended to me, and now I'm recommending it to you. If you want to know what the original tale is all about, this adaptation is short, charming, and free to watch on YouTube. I couldn't ask for a sweeter deal than this. The Nutcracker by Good Times Entertainment from 1995. It's easy to look upon these cheaper animated movies with disdain and to berate them because they're not as good as high-budget masterpieces, or to accuse them of merely trying to copy more successful works of famous studios. But I have a soft spot for films like these. Good Times specifically provided many animated adaptations that were a great source of entertainment for me as a kid, when they aired on the movie block of the Latin America Boomerang channel. I can't help but look at them with kindness. I didn't know Good Times had a Nutcracker adaptation until I started this project, and just seeing that little anime-inspired art style fills me with a sense of nostalgia. This story is much more based on the original fairy tale than it is on the ballet. In fact, it is heavily based on the original fairy tale. It takes very little liberty. It's Christmas Eve, and the children are blessed with gifts from Godfather Drosselmeyer, the clever and magical inventor. Marie, the older child, is given a Nutcracker doll, whom she falls in love with almost instantly. Her younger brother breaks the doll, which only makes her become more attached to it, and she spends the night admiring it in the living room. An army of mice attack, and they look so cute! I guess they're supposed to be menacing, but the art style is really not helping with that. This army looks so polite. Look at them! They have little uniforms and tiny swords and fuzzy little ears and tiny baby mouths, and I just want to give them a hug with my fingers because they're so tiny. The army is led by the Mouse King, who has 7 heads and is supposed to look like a monstrosity. But gosh, even he looks cute in this art style. 7 times as cute. Look at his little cape. This is a bit detrimental to the story, I would argue, because later on the Mouse King will try to threaten Marie and blackmail her into giving him all her Christmas candy, and her books and dresses for him to chew on. And she does, because she's scared of him, but I don't see why she would be. Look at this little guy. This story has a flashback moment where Drosselmeyer tells Marie the origin story of the Nutcracker, and the idea is that he used to be a normal guy, but he was put under a spell by the Mouse Queen, and in order to break the spell, he has to kill the Queen's son and also win the heart of a lady, even in his Nutcracker form. Luckily for him, Marie is ready to love him. To a concerning degree, honestly. She is obsessed with this doll. She is ready to give up everything for him. She dreams of him and only thinks of him and professes her love to him multiple times. Her parents think she's just playing pretend, but Drosselmeyer is actively feeding her fantasy and encouraging her to sink deeper into it. The audience knows that the Nutcracker is a real human, but if I were the parents, I'd be a little more concerned over my daughter's sanity. Because this movie is so heavily based on the original tale, I feel like at times this is detrimental to the pacing. This film works on fairy tale logic, but it also has a very bedtime story-esque sequence of events. No real tension is built, the characters keep foregoing reason, and the plot drags on a bit too much at certain places. The most infuriating part to me is when the Nutcracker has this ultimate showdown against the Mouse King, and Marie is just sitting in her room while the boys fight outside, feeling too anxious to even look. Girl, that's your boyfriend out there, fighting for his life. Can't you at least lend him a hand? A little word of encouragement? At least the movie is kind enough to show us what is happening on the other side of that door, because the Marie POV isn't doing the story any favors. In general, Marie feels a little bland as a protagonist. She's overly kind, but not in a way that feels deliberate, just in the lazy writing way. You could make the argument that it's because this is a 40-minute movie based on a fairy tale, but other characters are shown to have enough of a personality even with less screen time. Her brother is surprisingly sarcastic, her parents are absolute airheads, and Drosselmeyer is a straight-up gift. Look at his little twirl when he walks into the room, I just love this guy. The ending also doesn't make a lot of sense. We are told the Nutcracker is a prince, but that's because he was a regular commoner who was set into marrying royalty. Except the wedding doesn't pan out. So he's not a prince, right? Except, no, he is the prince, but of the land of sweets. But like, how? He was a regular guy. When did that happen? Was this a perk that came with being turned into a doll? I'm criticizing this, but that's mostly a fault with the original story, and it can be easily explained away with a shrug and a who cares, it's a fairy tale. If you can give into the fantasy of it, then great, but don't come looking for anything deeper than that. This would have entertained me as a kid, and I think there is merit to be found on that idea. Overall, you could say I had a good time. Entertainment, 1995. It's the Nutcracker Prince from 1990. It was released by Warner Brothers in limited theaters, but something about it just screams low-budget knockoff. I like this one. Well, I like most of it. Let's get into why. Right off the bat, this movie managed to win me over. We focus on Clara, a girl stuck between childhood and adulthood. And this struggle is depicted with a type of subtlety that is usually absent from these lower-budget animated movies. She plays with dolls and runs around with her little brother, and she makes faces at her sister and teases her over having a boyfriend. But at the same time, she watches the dancers at her Christmas party with eager eyes, not entirely sure of how to join them, and she dreams of a world bigger than her living room. I love this angle for Clara's character. The Nutcracker story is heavily based on dream sequences, and a lot of adaptations take this as an opportunity to discuss how much you should get lost in your own fantasies and when it's time to come back to Earth. Some versions handle this idea better than others, and this one is a positive example, because the question comes from Clara herself. It's not a case of her being perfectly happy with her daydreams and the adults in her life insisting that she is too old for them. Here, Clara is the one wondering whether it's time to grow up and leave her toys behind. And 15 minutes in, the animation style changes for the worse. So far, the style had been pretty standard. It had moments of beautiful fluidity, but also some choppier bits where you could see the corners were cut. The colors were nice and warm, the backgrounds had some complex shading here and there, and the character movements felt rather natural. This is all depicting the Christmas party at Clara's house, including the usual story bits like getting a Nutcracker doll as a gift from Drosselmeyer and having her brother break it. As Clara sulks in anger, Drosselmeyer decides to tell her the tale of his nephew, a young boy who was put under a nasty spell and changed into the very doll she holds. This bit is told in a much more cartoony style, with simple shapes, backgrounds, and animation. The colors are flashy, the perspective and proportions are wonky on purpose, the movements are exaggerated, and the characters themselves are much more one-dimensional. It's a weird shift that completely clashes with the previous style and doesn't even add much to the story being told. When we got to this change, I was worried that the rest of the movie was going to be like this. But no, this lasts for another 15 minutes and then we're back to the old animation style, which the movie thankfully sticks with for the rest of the runtime. According to Drosselmeyer, the Nutcracker will remain under a spell until he kills the Mouse King and wins the hand of a fair maiden. Clara, who has become enamored with the doll, sneaks into the living room in the middle of the night to play with it, introducing it to all of her other toys as if it were their ruler. That's when Drosselmeyer shows up as a ghost and casts a magic spell that brings all toys to life, right as the house is attacked by the Mouse King and his army. The Nutcracker awakens and has to lead the soldiers to battle. Clara saves him from being killed, but hits her head and wakes up in bed the next day, wondering if this was all a dream. But on the next night, she sneaks back to the living room to do the exact same thing again. We have another Drosselmeyer ghost moment and another battle, and it's weird that they split it into two separate nights. It's not like Clara got up to any adventures while she was awake. This time though, the Nutcracker succeeds in slaying the king, and they actually show his sword covered in blood, which is more violence than I was expecting from this kind of movie. But little did I know, this was only a taste of what's to come. The final 10 minutes of the movie are honestly fantastic. There's the romance between Clara and the Nutcracker, the resolution to Clara's character arc, with whether or not she's ready to grow up, a surprisingly intense showdown between Clara and the Mouse King, who is dragging himself half dead, holding onto his bleeding chest with nothing but rage in his eyes. And the Nutcracker can't do anything but watch as he slowly and painfully regresses into his doll form. It's effective, it's dramatic, it's great. I love it. This movie has issues. There's the weird animation switch, the awkward splitting of the battle into two different nights, and there's also how Clara doesn't do anything while those battles are happening. Like, just squash the mouse, girl. Go get a broom or something. But the stuff that works really works. I love the character designs. There's this generic 90s beauty to them, and it fully adds to the atmosphere for me. I also love the character of the Nutcracker. I love his switching between his doll form and his living form, and he's always so polite and soft-spoken. I can see why Clara was into the guy. So much of the movie seems to happen in those final 10 minutes, which can be considered a bit of a pacing issue, but I just enjoyed the sequence of events so much that I don't want to complain about it. If I had this VHS as a kid, it would have been a rewatch staple. This was a delightful little treat that makes me feel very glad I started this project, and I hope your heart has room for a Nutcracker Prince. The Nutcracker and the Mouse King from 2004. This movie is not something you watch. It's something that's hurled at you non-stop, like a fireman's hose, like a freight train with busted brakes, like candy being catapulted by a toy army. No one ever stops talking. Every single second is filled with characters reciting quips or puns or weird comments or conversations that go absolutely nowhere. It's insane. And the way they talk is incredibly weird. They speed up or slow down mid-word and keep interrupting their own sentences in the strangest possible places.
You're crazy. It's a chunk of wood. It can't cry. It's just sap. Why don't you get some real friends?
She will need all the help she can get if she's to succeed in her journey to the land of dreams.
To be fair, this movie is dubbed, as the original audio is in Russian, but the animation itself is so odd I can't even fault the dub. I think they were just trying to follow along with these wacky drawings. The characters never look quite right, they're always moving either too much or too little. The animation isn't ugly, but it's not exactly good either. It's excessive in all the wrong places. As for the story, I don't even know if there's a point in explaining it. Things just happen in this movie. You're strapped in and unable to run. You will experience whatever is going on. There is no choice in the matter, no time to take it in, no chance to try and make sense of the narrative. There's a spoiled prince, and Drosselmeyer is the castle magician, and he gives the prince a magic nut from the land of dreams, but the prince tosses it into a fire and is turned into the Nutcracker, and all of his court members are turned into toys, and then Drosselmeyer travels the world with his magical toy shop searching for someone who can break the spell, and this person might just be Clara, the girl who runs into the toy shop and becomes fascinated by the Nutcracker doll, so now they have to go after the magic nut from the land of dreams to turn the prince into a kid again. Then there's the mice. The Mouse King envies the prince because the prince gets to have real riches while the mice live in squalor, so they want to get the magic nut to wish for rats to rule the world. And then there's the Rat Witch, who says she is Drosselmeyer's rival, and she's magically bound to a wheelchair, but her shadow can move around independently, and it keeps creeping people out and twisting the world into nightmarish fantasies. This is by far the coolest concept in the movie, and it's given no time to shine because everything else is fighting for the viewer's attention. What is going on? Literally, what is going on? Also, this is the evilest looking Drosselmeyer I have seen in these adaptations, and that's saying a lot. I kept checking to see if I had accidentally left this movie at 1.5 times speed. By the time these characters get to the land of dreams, the movie somehow manages to get even faster, and they're just throwing concepts at you with no rhyme or reason. You have zero chance of taking in this magical world. We're already moving on to the next bizarre setting or quirky creature or magical object. I'm out of breath just looking at this. This is too much for me. It's too fast, it's too wild, too random. I feel old watching this. This was Cocomelon for the 2004 babies. I'm not even saying it's a bad movie, I don't even know what to say. The characters never shut up, but I'm left utterly speechless. Welcome to The Nutcracker and the Magic Flute, a German movie from 2022. It may seem like a bit of an obvious statement to make, but when adapting a story, part of the fun lies in adding your own spin to things. If every single entry in this project was just a retelling of the Nutcracker tale beat by beat, then we would have 24 identical narratives. Of course, changing things means taking a bit of a gamble, as you can never really tell how the audience might react to your way of seeing things. And it also means now you have to put in the work to make sure that the story flows in a cohesive way. I say all this because this movie presented me with one of the most captivating takes on the Nutcracker story so far, and I did not see it coming. The world it creates feels truly magical and skillfully expands on the spirit of the original while also standing out on its own. It's not a perfect movie by any means. In fact, my main problems with it can be found right at the beginning. We open with a small ballet performance held in a Staubon household, as a young girl named Marie dances to a couple of guests. Just as the presentation ends, we find out that Marie's late father owed a lot of money to this rat-looking fellow, who just so happens to have a Nutcracker doll, and he says that he will forgive the debt if Marie promises to be his wife. This is weird. Marie is clearly depicted as being not much older than a child, and this guy is pushing 60. It's messed up, and I don't like it. Then the guy gives her the Nutcracker doll, and Marie starts singing about missing the days where she didn't have a care in the world. And then she's shrunken down to doll size, thanks to, and this is the canon explanation, Christmas magic. And that same spell brings her toys to life. And one of the toys is the Nutcracker, and he is a prince who can't remember his own past, and he travels to the magical land where the rats rule, and Marie follows him, and now the movie can properly begin. This whole introduction is so contrived, and the pacing is all over the place. Nothing is given a chance to breathe, information just keeps being thrown at you, new conflicts pop up at every corner, and none of it is innovative enough to make it worth it. But then we get to the magic rat land, and oh man, that's when things get good. Turns out the Nutcracker was once a child named George, the son of a powerful king. But his father was put under a sleeping spell by his new evil stepmother, who is really a shape-shifting rat in disguise. Now, George's kingdom has been taken over by these treacherous creatures, and his only chance of fighting against them lies in an ancient artifact. A magic flute which will change them back to their powerless rodent forms. The ideas here are so inventive, and they build a wonderful foundation to a magical realm that is as intriguing as it is fun to explore. There's a masquerade ball, humans in hiding, ancient riddles, old friends, new enemies, tragic backstories. It's a delicious mishmash of concepts that both reference the original tale and build upon those notions. The execution is where it falters a little. The dialogue can be a bit off-putting, with some characters using more modern expressions than the setting really calls for. And there's a couple of moments where I wish they had kept the scene quiet instead of having the cast relentlessly quip back and forth. This movie also suggests that it might be a musical, with the songs being melodies from the original ballet but with new lyrics thrown in. And although this isn't the only movie in this collection where they try to do it, I'd say this is one of the better ones. But that's also not saying much, because the songs are only okay. Some of the lyrics are a little forced here and there, and the songs are all too short to make an impact. Except for the little tune that the rats play at the party, that one slaps. The pacing is still an issue, with some scenes feeling like the characters are rushing through plot points instead of letting them hold the weight they deserve. In the second half of the movie, there's a character who turns evil, or is revealed to have been evil all along, and it comes completely out of left field. It was really weird. But hey, if Disney can do it, then this movie can do it too. But even then, I was invested in this story. I feel like the middle part of the movie is where it's best executed. It's when the world building felt the most organic, and to me, this film is at its peak when it's letting us explore this magical kingdom that it's trying to craft. When we come back to the real world at the end, the pacing is as awkward as it was at the start, and everything seems a little more random than usual. But when the characters got their happy ending, I was satisfied, even if those final minutes were a little contrived. I like this movie more for what it's trying to be rather than what it ends up being. But I really like what it's trying to be. I could have gone into more detail regarding the concepts or the world building stuff that I liked, but this is one of those cases where I don't want to give too much away. It's not like there's any big twists or anything, but if you're interested in the world of the Nutcracker story and you're looking for an original adaptation to check out, I truly recommend you give this one a chance. It might not fully succeed at what it set out to do, but man, this is a solid A for effort. Perhaps this magic flute has a tune or two that can make your imagination dance. The Nutcracker Sweet, with double E. The Nutcracker Dessert. The Nutcracker Cheesecake. The Nutcracker chocolate muffin. The Nutcracker candy. Marie is a sweet young girl who just can't get along with her brother Fritz. However, every time they fight, their mother makes them recite a little rhyme about how siblings are a gift from heaven in an attempt to get them to make up and move on. They repeat it half-heartedly, not really getting the meaning of the words, and signifying to the viewer that they're about to learn a magical lesson about love and friendship. Marie gets a Nutcracker doll as is par for the course, and witnesses a battle between rats and toy soldiers. Her parents think this was just a fever dream, but Fritz is the only one who believes her and thinks the battle was real, once again showing us that the siblings have a lot more in common than they think. The Nutcracker takes Marie to the land of sweets, where they must fight against the Rat King, and as Marie crosses the barrier, she becomes a toy, which I absolutely love. I'm all for it. Usually these adaptations have her be a human, but small, but I adore the idea that she must adapt in order to fit into this world. She loses the human part of herself, but gains a whole new way of connecting to this magical land. I'm surprised other adaptations don't try to do something similar. Fritz follows her into this parallel dimension, becoming a toy as well, though I'm not super fond of his design. He looks like something out of Little Big Planet. It's also really unfair how he has to be like 5 times smaller than Marie just because he happens to be the younger one. If I were Fritz, I would sue. In contrast to the magical wooden toys, the rats have a very rusty mechanical look, based on springs and gears and screws. That dichotomy helps highlight the difference between those two forces, the battle between the traditional and organic and the industrial and automated. Them being robot-like also helps sell the idea that they are mindless soldiers, simply following orders instead of believing in a cause. Another highlight for me is the design of the Rat King, who walks around with his big, hulky body and his protruding adjacent heads. He looks absolutely vile, straight up abnormal. And he looks that way because he was born from a potion, like dark magic. And even that doesn't stop him from transforming into a killing machine, with his tank-like build towering over his army. I was all for this adaptation, until I saw it was made in 2015. Then I suddenly was kind of underwhelmed by the animation. Sometimes it almost looks like I was watching a video game, and I don't mean that affectionately. It's a little too blocky and cheap feeling for my tastes, and definitely not impressive for the time in which it was made. But I do give it credit for using the Nutcracker premise for telling a different story than what we usually see. Although Fritz is present for many Nutcracker adventures, he rarely gets to participate in the actual story, let alone fight alongside Marie. This is a new spin on the classic. How exciting! I also like the character of the Nutcracker here. He embodies the best characteristics of a prince, being clever and polite and worrying about the safety of his kingdom. He defeats the Mouse King by using the beast's own strength against him, and he has a kind enough heart to offer him mercy when the going gets tough. I appreciate that. He's a guy I'd like to support. The siblings do learn how to work together, and they go back home and everything is good, and then Drosselmeyer introduces them to his very special nephew, who just so happens to look a lot like the Nutcracker Prince they met the night before. I like it how both Marie and Fritz have a reason to be excited over this meeting, as both siblings had established a connection with the prince over the course of the movie. It ends up feeling like some sort of family secret, an adventure they both get to share with each other and no one else. This movie is no masterpiece, but it does bring a lot of interesting elements to the table, especially in terms of Nutcracker adaptations. Maybe it can be used to get some kids to be nicer to their brothers and sisters or something. Like a sweet little dessert, it might not be as nutritious as a complete meal, but it can satisfy a craving and make you come back for seconds. here we are with another normal Nutcracker movie. Wait a minute, this isn't a normal Nutcracker movie. This is the nuttiest Nutcracker. Our story begins with Marie, a young woman who is very sad and keeps complaining that she has to spend Christmas all alone, despite her brother and uncle being like, right there. Her uncle Drosselmeyer then gives her a gift, which she promises she will keep forever, and then immediately loses it. Great job, Marie. The gift is a nutcracker, with the teeny tiniest mouth gap that would only be good for cracking open chia seeds. The nuts are very excited, because this means their beloved leader has come back home. Oh yeah, there are living nuts in this movie. The nuts are alive. They aren't like special nuts or anything. I think the implication is that all food is alive, and that the Nutcracker rules over all food, because he is the rightful king to the land of sweets, and desserts are a kind of food. It's weird that the nuts like him though, right? It's weird that they love a guy known for cracking them open, smashing their skulls and spilling their nut brains over and stuff. But why is he their savior? Do all nuts yearn for the sweet release of death? There's also a Mouse King, and he wants to rule over Christmas, and to do that he has to get the star on top of a tree. There's a battle between toys and rats, and the nuts decide to help out. No dude, you're thinking of a different movie. Drosselmeyer makes Marie grow small, probably as revenge for dissing his presence earlier, and now she's caught up in this nutritional political dispute, and if they don't put the star back on top of the tree before midnight, there will be no Christmas again forever. Crazy how the star topper of this one house determines the existence of the holiday in general, but we're in a movie with talking peanuts, everything goes. Speaking of which, I'm sure the nuts only talk because this is called the nuttiest Nutcracker. And instead of making the Nutcracker character himself be more unhinged, they just threw some nuts into the story and called it a day. This movie is nothing special. It's not particularly well animated, even for the time. It tries to have self-aware jokes and break the fourth wall, but it just comes off as another tiresome 90s cliché. I didn't find myself caring for any of the characters. The nuts are all very one-note, and their personalities tend to be annoying rather than funny. The Nutcracker Prince is so generically nice he comes off as bland, and our hero Marie tries to be sassy, but it just rings bratty. Besides, she keeps flip-flopping between being a skeptical coward and being filled with Christmas spirit, and it's so spontaneous it doesn't even feel like character development. I feel like I should have heard of this movie. On one hand, the animation style and the subject matter give off that feeling of a so bad it's good masterpiece, and on the other hand, the fact that it was made for TV and distributed on VHS suggests that this could be regarded as a classic in plenty of households. But I had no idea this film existed. I feel like critic video essayists would have a fun time with this one. There's plenty to dissect and to make fun of and to call garbage or whatever. But to me, it just feels bland. It impacted me so little, especially when compared to some other entries from this list. I could see it going both ways. Maybe someone hates it to the point of mockery, or maybe some other people keep it close to their nostalgic hearts. But to me, it's just sitting there. Like a bowl of dusty peanuts you ignore in the name of the better snacks at a Christmas party. Give it a watch if you'd like, it's free on YouTube, and maybe you'll have a stronger impression than I did. Unfortunately for me, the nuttiest Nutcracker did not deserve its title at all. The Nutcracker 1977, also known as The One with Baryshnikov. For those of you not in the know, Mikhail Baryshnikov is a very famous dancer who has also dabbled in acting. That's all you gotta know, because that's all I knew going into this. Mostly, I know Baryshnikov because my mom really likes him. I understand it's silly to reduce the guy's very prolific skills and career to that simple fact, but that was enough for me. I'm not gonna sit here and read the guy's Wikipedia page just to pretend I know stuff about him. My mom really likes him, and I wanted to see what the fuss was all about. But we don't only have Baryshnikov in this. Unfortunately, we'll get to that. Since this is a Nutcracker ballet production, we also have all other elements to consider, such as the different characters, multiple dance numbers, sets, costumes, and all that good stuff. And having watched this, especially after watching other Nutcracker ballet spectacles, I can definitely say this one isn't it. First of all the copies that are available to watch for free on YouTube have abysmal quality, but also they're the only ones that I had reasonable access to, so that's the footage you're seeing in the background. If you're fully committed to watching this, I can only hope you get a DVD for cheap on eBay or something, since I sure can't. But the problems are not related to the footage. The thing is, this performance is very much tied to the idea that it's edited as a movie, not as a live show. There are multiple instances where a doll version of the character is shown on screen, and then they cut to the human version of the character. There is no stage magic, it's just editing. This would look incredibly silly as a live performance, it's just not meant to happen like that. Still, that's not inherently a con on the movie's part, it's simply not my preference. It's just that I personally love the stage magic aspect of the live show versions, and this one is lacking that. The sets themselves sometimes look cramped or flat too, which detracts from the magic of the dance a little for me. And then Baryshnikov shows up. And oh man, I get it. He plays the part of the Nutcracker Prince, and it's a slam dunk. Oh, it's delicious. The second this man swung his sword, I was hooked. The swiftness, the weight, the strength of his movement. Clara jumps into his arms and she feels almost weightless. He holds her so effortlessly but so protectively, and he's been on stage for 30 seconds. It's amazing. The battle against the Rat King is my favorite sequence in this. Baryshnikov excels at jumping and kicking and spinning, and he gets to do so much of that here. It's bouncy and high stakes and fully energetic. He brings, dare I say, a certain sexiness to the Nutcracker character, just from the astronomical control this man has over his body and movements. And he's still wearing the mask at that point, mind you. There's the sequence where he swings the sword at the rat, and he dances in such a way to convey that it's unbearably heavy, and oh man, I felt that. The guy's good. He's really good. He dances with Clara for a bit, but then we get to the Land of Sweets part, meaning it's time to watch a bunch of people who aren't Baryshnikov dance. And here's when it becomes very obvious to me that he's the main highlight in this. I'm much more interested in him, and the rest of the performances aren't unique enough to captivate me. So when we're focusing on something else, I just can't help but feel like we're wasting our time. To the production's credit, they do provide him with some other extended dance sequences and give him plenty of space to shine. Again, what this man does best is jump and kick and spin around, and they crafted a whole number based on him doing exactly that, and it's great! It reminds me of why I came here in the first place. Another performance I'd like to talk about is Clara's, who was played by Kelsey Kirkland, and wow, talk about being fluid. Her movements are stunning and ethereal. All of the weight that Baryshnikov puts into his spins is wonderfully counterbalanced by the sheer featheriness of Kirkland's own movements. She is outstanding here. Come for the Nutcracker, stay for Clara. The chemistry between the two main characters carries this performance not only on a technical level, but narratively as well. It becomes so strikingly obvious that Clara is deeply in love with the Nutcracker Prince, who in return cherishes her just as passionately. Every synchronized dance move sells you on this idea. They match each other's freaks, or whatever the youngsters are saying nowadays. But then we get to the end of the show, where Drosselmeyer shows up and all other characters from the ballet fade, and Clara wakes up back in her living room. And that's it. It was all a dream. What a downer! Come on, they spent a whole hour building up this wonderful romance between Clara and the Nutcracker, and then it's all gone? There's no scene of Drosselmeyer in real life introducing Clara to his handsome uncursed nephew, by the way. Clara wakes up, she's alone forever, the end. What a waste. Are the highlights high enough for me to ignore the cons? Yeah, not really. At the end of the day, there are better ballet versions out there. What you really should do is just watch the parts where Baryshnikov and Kirkland dance together, which is what I ended up doing as a rewatch while writing this. Those scenes are fantastic. The rest is just okay. I get the hype. If you only watch this version because of Baryshnikov too, I can definitely say I understand where you're coming from. The Nutcracker, but with Care Bears. I didn't watch the Care Bears growing up, and judging by my analytics, I'd guess most of you also didn't. So I'm not gonna bother questioning things like the Care Bear lore and why there's an elephant and a lion there. Those aren't bears. We start the movie with a bunch of kids rehearsing for a Nutcracker dance recital. The teacher reminds us that, actually, Tchaikovsky's ballet is only one of the many different ways the original story by E.T.A. Hoffmann has been retold. She literally says that, I'm quoting her word for word, and it caught me completely off guard because nobody ever mentions the author by name in these adaptations. The kids ask the teacher to tell them her favorite version of the Nutcracker story, and she says that the one she likes the most is the one where the Care Bears are in it. I respectfully disagree with her on that. Her story starts with the Care Bears up on Carolot, setting up Christmas decorations and watching over the children of the earth. One of those children, a girl named Anna, is very sad even though it's Christmas, and the Care Bears just can't have that. Two of the bears come down to talk to the girl, and she explains that she's sad because her best friend moved away. The Care Bears tell her that even though they are separated by distance, the two of them can still be friends, because true friendship lives in the heart. And then the Nutcracker shows up. The Nutcracker story is not connected to the little girl at all. He just randomly shows up at her house while trying to escape the Mouse King. They run around a bunch and then they all decide to go to Toyland, where all the toys come from, because an evil vizier has taken over the land, and if they don't defeat him, he's going to ruin Christmas. The rest of the special is the Care Bears and the girl and her brother running around Toyland, meeting different characters, visiting candy locations, and trying to find a special ring that can stop the vizier. There's also the mystery of the missing prince, the true heir of Toyland who disappeared after the vizier took over, and he bears a striking similarity to our Nutcracker here. Like, really striking. Like, so striking it kinda ruins the mystery. Listen, it's the Care Bears, it's no masterpiece. And I know I can't be too mad at a TV special made for 5-year-olds, but even so, I expected a little more. It annoys me how this isn't set up as the Care Bears specifically setting out to help the Nutcracker. They try to help a little girl, and the Nutcracker just sort of shows up there. It feels too disjointed. They try to have a lesson at the end, because Anna has to go back to the real world and the Nutcracker Prince has to stay in Toyland. And they talk about how they can still be friends even if they are apart, echoing the scene where Anna first talks to the Care Bears. That's cool. But then, in the very next scene, the prince shows up in real life, because he's moved into Anna's neighborhood. So I guess the lesson is... nothing? She doesn't learn anything. The guy just moved into her neighborhood. Problem solved. The pacing is annoyingly slow at times. At the start of the movie, our heroes have to outrun the Mouse King and his army. But then you have a bunch of moments where the characters run a little, stop, state that they have to run, and then keep running. It really feels like we're just wasting time to make the film last longer. Also, when the Mouse King reports back to the Vizier, he says that Anna threw her shoe at him and that it really hurt. This is a reference to the ballet and also to the original story, where Clara hits the Mouse King with her slipper and allows the Nutcracker to deliver the final blow. Except in this version, Anna doesn't do that. She never throws the shoe. They throw snowballs, but not a shoe. It's really weird that they just forget to put that in the storyboard. It's petty to complain about the presence of the Care Bears in the Care Bears version of the Nutcracker, but they seem a little out of place. They don't do much aside from punching the enemies down with their flower powers. Again, the connection between whatever the Care Bears do and the specific adventure of the Nutcracker isn't very strong. With that said though, I do think it's funny how the true power of the Care Bears seems to be violence. Call it flower power or Care Bear stare all you want, that is one aggressive beam of rainbow. This is me violently sending texts about how much I love my friends in the group chat.
I don't care.
I do like the Care Bears design, they are really cute. They were made to sell toys and their charm is working on me. My favorite design is probably the elephant. Not only is he pink, but his trunk is also heart-shaped. That's just precious. The movie ends with the implication that their teacher is Anna from the story, which is a predictable plot twist, but a welcome one. And then she leaves and they never finish rehearsing. The camera cuts to the Care Bears laughing at the kids and the credits roll. If you ever felt like the original Nutcracker was fine, but it was missing the awkward pacing and the limited animation budget of an 80s cartoon show, then this is the movie for you. It's harmless, but not much else. I'm sure there's better media out there, both for the Nutcracker and the Care Bears themselves. Have you ever looked at the Nutcracker and thought, boy, this could really use some Tom and Jerry? Then, surprisingly enough, this isn't the movie for you. Welcome to Tom and Jerry, a Nutcracker Tale. Jerry is a stage mouse who loves the Nutcracker ballet, but at the end of every Christmas season, he grows sad because it'll be one more year until he can see the show again. But not this year, because some Christmas magic transforms the theater into its own whimsical dimension, where mice can be king and toys come to life. Meanwhile, Tom is part of a gang of stray cats ruled by a vicious cat leader, and he wants a piece of that Christmas pie too, invading Jerry's Nutcracker kingdom and taking the throne for himself. Now, Jerry has to search for the toy maker and ask him for help in getting back his crown. This one's cute. But here, that's not necessarily a good thing. Let's get into some of the stuff I like first, though. I like the toys. There's this horse who can only talk if her string is pulled, and later on, when the cats want to get some information out of her, it turns out she feels compelled to talk whenever they pull the string, and the cats use this to their advantage. I like that, it's clever toy lore. There's also this elf guy who's not really a toy, but a decoration. So he wasn't built to handle rougher kinds of play, and starts falling apart the more the journey goes on. I like the way this world works. Not a lot of explanation is given as to how this magical dimension functions. Is it a new world? Is it just a stage? How did the theater suddenly grow enough to fit all of these castles? But we're not in it for the deep world building of Tom and Jerry's Nutcracker. One element I enjoyed was that the characters could slice through the literal fabric of reality and use this as a fast travel method, like they were just cutting through panels of stage background. That was a really silly parallel multiverse detail that added a lot of fun variety to the mix. But now, for my biggest issue, that's not what Tom and Jerry is about. I was expecting slapstick. I thought this cat and mouse would put each other through hell and inflict severe physical pain on each other and bounce back from their wounds ready for more. And there was some slapstick, I guess. Characters are shot out of cannons, and they throw hammers at each other, and they hit each other with bats, and yeah, I guess in theory that's what we needed, but also, none of it is funny. I've seen old Tom and Jerry. I've seen new Tom and Jerry. That stuff's supposed to be hilarious. It's supposed to be high energy and non-stop and clever and snappy and painful, and it's supposed to make you laugh. Here, I feel like the characters spend more time looking at the scenery and goofing around than they do beating each other up, and that's a problem. I laughed one time during this movie, and it's when the ballerina character is trying to hoist up some keys to her cage so that she can escape, and the Cat King catches her, and you think he's going to be mad because she's trying to run away, but no. He gets on the floor and starts playing with the dangling keys. Because he's a cat. I like that, that was cute. But that's it? The whole movie, there was one funny thing that happened? Something went terribly askew here. They needed something better. I don't know if it's the directing or the storyboarding or if the concept itself was flawed. Either the people who were making this didn't feel like making it, or they really misunderstood the point of Tom and Jerry. There's good stuff in here, but it's been given to the wrong characters. Tom and Jerry have been stripped of their essence so badly that they've just become a regular cat and mouse. Like an AU that got caught up so hard in itself that the protagonists just start to feel like the author's OCs. Go make a movie about your own characters then. Don't get Tom and Jerry for this if you're not gonna respect them. It's not a bad movie, it's just not a Tom and Jerry movie. If you pretend these characters are just some random animals, then this might be a cute little take on the Nutcracker tale. But that's all it's ever going to be. Welcome, friends, to the live show performance of Mickey's Nutcracker. When I started working on this Nutcracker project, I realized that there were so many versions of the ballet out there that if I typed The Nutcracker followed by a number between 1980 and 2020, a different performance would show up. So when I typed The Nutcracker 1991, this was the video that greeted me, and my theory was proven right, because I hadn't come across this play before. And I also don't think I would have found it if I hadn't tried out this method. So, what's the deal with this Mickey version of the Nutcracker, which destiny itself has placed upon my hands? This play started out as a live performance from 1991, but it was later filmed and aired as a special on the Disney Channel. It's silly, campy, and sweet, and the logic of the tale takes a backseat while it lets fun take the wheel, creating an incredibly enjoyable ride. There's a narrator, and he tells us a tale that begins on Minnie's house on Christmas Eve. The house is filled with Minnie's colorful neighbors, and also an array of Disney characters that frankly strikes me as pretty random. Like, I get why Goofy and Pluto are there, but Roger Rabbit? Okay, I guess his movie had come out a couple years earlier. But then what's up with Chip and Dale? Were they in vogue back in the 90s? Maybe. And what's Tigger doing there? Did Minnie really only invite Tigger from the 100-Acre Woods? Where's Pooh? But okay, everyone's singing and dancing, and Minnie gets a Nutcracker doll, who looks a lot like a certain fellow mouse. After the party, some Christmas magic happens, and all of Minnie's toys come to life, including the recently acquired Nutcracker, taking the form of a handsome little soldier. That's when the Rat King shows up, and the narrator helpfully tells us that the Rat King is really just a prince under a spell. You might be wondering, why does Minnie look like this while the Rat King looks like that if they're both rodents? Well, the answer is that the Rat King is a rat, and Minnie is a mouse. You can't argue with that logic. There's a couple of twists in the formula that I like. They use the music from the ballet, but they often include lyrics to the melodies. And this is, by far, the most successful adaptation to ever do it. I've seen my fair share of attempts over this project, and Mickey's Nutcracker takes the win for sure. The lyrics feel so catchy and well written that it's almost like they were part of the original ballet. They also put their own spin on the songs, making them feel fresh and surprising. They get jazzier arrangements, they feel bouncy, and fully match the funky choreography. When they get to the Land of Sweets, Roger Rabbit sings a whole number about the importance of thoroughly brushing your teeth after eating a bunch of candy, because of course he does. Of course Disney would try to impart a lesson on dental care in the middle of their holiday music. I shouldn't have expected anything different. I love the fourth wall breaks that happen with the narrator. He ends up playing the role of Drosselmeyer, showing up at the Christmas party to give Minnie the Nutcracker doll, and it's funny how he is literally narrating the story as it happens, but also taking part on it as a character. The narration dictates the flow of the story, but it's also diegetic. The characters can listen to it, interject, and even kidnap the narrator. It's silly, but it's very funny to me. I thought they were just going to play it very traditional and have the narrator be a separate character that's there to just give context to the events, and I was caught off guard by how playful they get with the concept. The production value for this is surprisingly high. It's a small cast and an even smaller stage, but they make it feel big by having plenty of costume changes, colorful moving sets, and elaborate dance sequences. The scenes feel busy, but never too crowded. The story follows most of the Nutcracker beats, but played a little loose. Mickey takes Minnie to the Land of Sweets, the Rat King follows them, he's defeated, and Minnie is crowned the new princess of the land. She never really makes it back home in this one. She doesn't really wake up from a dream or anything. She's just there forever now. And I really thought they were going with the dream route. There's this whole thing where the characters she meets in Mickey's Christmas magic realm all resemble Minnie's neighbors that she knows from her average life. And I thought they were going to do the whole traditional dream thing where Minnie wakes up and realizes it was all a dream and all her friends were there. And then her new neighbor walks in and he bears a striking resemblance to her Nutcracker. But no, they don't do any of that. Minnie leaves the real world behind and marries a life-size doll soldier. Even the narrator didn't see this ending coming. But whatever, it's cute. The longevity of this one is a little hard to defend. Even though I truly enjoyed the music and the lyrics and the dance numbers, the Disney characters chosen for this performance really dated. I mean, do kids nowadays even know who Roger Rabbit is? Another thing is that, sadly, this one doesn't seem to have an official HD release. It's free to watch on YouTube, but with VHS rip quality, which to me does add to the charm, but that's only because I'm a freak who finds that sort of stuff poetic. It's hard to convince the average Joe that no, really, the fuzz enhances the experience. If you go to the YouTube postings of this, the comments are filled with people talking about how they too recorded this performance on VHS and watched the tapes until they wore out. So this one clearly has its share of fans. And it's completely warranted. It's a really sweet and cozy adaptation. It's cute! Look at Mickey and Minnie, look at Minnie's bouncy blue dress, look at the dancing snowflakes, the welcoming holiday party. Everyone gets their happy ending and I wouldn't have it any other way. Maybe you too can find some Christmas magic at Minnie's house on Christmas Eve. We're all gonna have to be real mature about the name of this one, okay? I present to you The Hard Nut. The Hard Nut is a 1992 adaptation of the Nutcracker ballet set in a retro 2D version of the 50s. The costumes all follow the fashion of the times, and the character designs have this exaggerated pop art quality to them that really adds to the feel. The music is still the same, and although the dance moves themselves have a bit of a modern flair at times, it is still very much a ballet. What really makes this one stand out to me is what they have chosen to do with the second act. You see, the first act follows all of the plot beats that we have come to expect from this piece. There's a Christmas gathering at the Stahlbaum house, Drosselmeyer shows up with fantastical gifts, he gives Marie the Nutcracker doll, Marie admires it intensely, the party ends and everybody goes home, Marie shrinks down, the rats attack, the Nutcracker defeats the Rat King, the curse is broken, and the snowflakes play us off as the curtains roll. But while the Nutcracker is battling the Rat King, Marie delivers her trademark slipper attack and then passes out. Instead of being taken to some Candyland or magical realm in the second act, she is actually placed upon a couch to recover, and Drosselmeyer comes to tell her the story of the Nutcracker Prince, who is really just his handsome nephew who's under a terrible curse. From this point on, we follow the story of Drosselmeyer and the Nutcracker. The magician must search the world for a hard nut, hence the title, to cure the curse of a princess, and when he finds the nut, it turns out his nephew is the only one who can crack it. But he kills the Rat Queen and becomes cursed in the process. This is the short story, the tale which inspired the original ballet. The idea of integrating this narrative into the second act works so beautifully that I feel like it elevates the original to a new standard of storytelling. Although I like Tchaikovsky's second act more than the first, thanks to the wider variety of dances on display, it is rather lacking in plot. All you do is follow Marie's point of view as she watches a bunch of people dance around. But here, the moves and beats of the second act are reimagined as part of Drosselmeyer's story, meaning you still get to see all of that amazing dancing, but with more stakes behind it. For example, while in the original ballet you see shorter dance numbers representing different corners of the world under the guise of watching the candies from each country do a little performance for Marie, here they represent Drosselmeyer's journey across the globe in search for the nut, and they even add a new country to the mix. It brings the context and story of the short tale into the ballet in a level that the original had not, which is not a fault of the original by any means, but it is a thoughtful and well-executed addition. This ballet makes it very clear that the Nutcracker is Drosselmeyer's nephew, which leads me to one of my favorite bits from this piece. After the Rat King is defeated and the curse is lifted, the Nutcracker shares a wonderful slow dance sequence with Drosselmeyer, not with his newfound love interest. To me, this touches upon an aspect of the story that I don't see a lot of adaptations dealing with, which is that Drosselmeyer essentially lost his nephew to the curse. Out of everyone involved, the magician should be the one that's most invested in getting him back to normal, and one of the people who would rejoice the hardest seeing his nephew back as his handsome human self. The dance between them is delicate and intense, almost as if Drosselmeyer is guiding him, teaching him the ways of humanity after his nephew has been out of touch with it for so long. I love it that the two of them get this moment, and their familial bond is shown to be just as strong as it is sincere. Another bit I deeply enjoyed was at the end, once Drosselmeyer is done telling his tale and Marie has fully recovered from the battle. Even though she didn't really do anything, she just kind of passed out there. The girl and the nephew meet again, but their dancing is cautious and individual. It's supposed to be their moment to shine as a couple, but they aren't truly together yet. They are getting to know each other, which is clear thanks to the way they each pause while the other dances, as though learning the way the other moves, and tentatively join together only to pull themselves apart again. It is only after this entire performance, which is joined by the dancers from all other moments in the show, representing the many events that led to the meeting between the two, that Marie and the nephew are ready to perform together, and their waltz becomes much more involved and intimate, with several passionate kisses sprinkled throughout. It's the story of them actually falling in love, and this ballet depicts it not as a one-time spark, but as an entire process, which makes the moment they finally come together all the more fulfilling. During the interlude between the first and the second act, we get a bit of an explanation on what we are about to see, and there's this bit right here that I can't get out of my head.
This is a love story between two people, but it's also about the love that's already in the world. In other words, you can search and search for the thing you want, and then you find it waiting for you back home. You just didn't recognize it before. You had to grow up.
What a stellar interpretation of the story, and you can see how it inspired every aspect of this adaptation. This ballet knows exactly what it wants to do, and does it with excellence. I do feel like watching the original Tchaikovsky ballet and reading the short story add to this viewing experience, just because of how much this one pulls and plays around with both versions of the tale. Either way, it's amazing and I love it. The nut may be hard, but it ain't hard to love the nut. You know, whenever I mentioned to a friend that I was working on a project where I would watch over 20 different adaptations of the Nutcracker, ranging from full-on performances to short TV episodes, this was the one they always asked about. Not the ballet shows, not any of the home media movies, not any of the recent live-action takes. This one. Courage the Cowardly Dog. It always left me floored, as before I compiled the list of media for this December project, I had no idea this episode even existed, let alone that it played such a huge part in my generation's connection to the Nutcracker story. And there's a very simple reason for that. I didn't watch Courage as a kid. I didn't like it. I didn't like how mean Eustace was to the dog. I didn't like how Courage was always getting hurt or laughed at or mistreated. I really didn't like it when he would try to tell his owners what was going on, and he would mumble his little whimpers and only get ignored and yelled at, and I didn't like it how this dog could never catch a freaking break. Everything's always happening to him, and half the people he's trying to save don't even care about him. I was 6 or 9 or 10 years old, and I was much more entertained by SpongeBob and Winx Club. Now, I'm sure Courage defenders are going to show up in my comments to argue that the cartoon was actually the best thing ever, and that it's not what it seems to be, or that you need to have a very high IQ to understand Courage the Cowardly Dog. And to that I say, it's okay not to like a thing. If you didn't like Courage either, you're valid, and please leave a comment to show that I'm not alone in this. But okay, this is the big one. This is the Nutcracker adaptation that made my friends aware of the Nutcracker. So let's take a look. The episode begins with Eustace and Muriel digging through the trash at their local dump and having a merry old time. Muriel finds a nutcracker, which she offers to Courage, but he doesn't see the appeal of the doll until the old lady teaches him how to use it. As night falls, some creepy things begin to happen, making you wonder when exactly the characters were planning on going home. I thought they were just here for like an afternoon hangout, but they really don't show any intention of leaving. But anyway, Eustace goes missing, and it looks like Muriel might be next. The villains of this tale are a pair of giant sneaky rats, who move in ballet steps and seem very fixated on getting that old lady, setting up all sorts of traps which Courage has to avoid, often with the help of his Nutcracker doll, which has proven to be quite the versatile gadget. Unfortunately, the dog's efforts are for nothing, as the rats capture Muriel and put her in a boiling cauldron along with the old man. In order to save them, Courage has to tap into his inner prima ballerina and put on a performance with his Nutcracker friend that strikes down the rats and saves the day. And then Eustace breaks the Nutcracker's teeth because Courage can't have any nice things. The end. I had no idea a Nutcracker doll was actually the Swiss Army knife of antique souvenirs. This guy can be used for anything and everything. I say this affectionately, I was truly entertained by watching how many uses Courage could find for his new friend. My favorite one is when he stretches the doll's feet all the way up a trash pile and then uses his mouth as a visor like he's looking through a submarine periscope. That was funny, that was some genuine cartoon fun. In terms of it being an actual adaptation, Courage takes the role of Clara, developing a connection to his Nutcracker doll, and the rats take the role of the rats. They're mean and nasty and they must be defeated. If only Courage had taken them out by tossing a shoe onto their heads, that would have really sealed the deal for me. The music of the ballet is featured as the soundtrack, and it's later revealed to be diegetic, with the rats listening to it on an old record player, which makes them seem like very cultured rodents, if I do say so myself. If they weren't so villainous, they could have had an actual shot at performing in the ballet too. It's a fun episode, and probably way more fun if you're actually a fan of Courage the Cowardly Dog, and to me, it shows how incorporating quote-unquote cultural grown-up stuff into your kid's cartoon can spark an interest for the source material that the younglings wouldn't have otherwise. I wonder how many other kids first heard of the Nutcracker from this episode, aside from my anecdotal friends, and what other stuff I might have missed out on since I didn't watch this show. But after this whole journey, I've learned one thing for sure. If you're ever having a rough day, you can at least rest easy with the notion that Courage is having an even worse one. Super Y! And the Nutcracker! I didn't watch Super Y as a kid, as it came a little bit after my time, and actually I'm really surprised that this thing got dubbed at all. To be completely honest, I know Super Y more because of the lost media search for the original stop-motion pilot, but here we're dealing with the official CG animated tune from 2007. Our story begins not with the Nutcracker, but instead with Princess P, who is throwing a party. But Sleeping Beauty didn't get any sleep the previous night, and she's super grumpy, so she's not letting anyone have any fun. Wyatt, our super leader, says this is a super problem, so we gotta call the Super Readers, a gang of super children who are super able to help. The pig has letter powers, Little Red Riding Hood has word power, the princess has spelling power, and Super Y has the power to read, and oh, looks like I'm in this too. Apparently, I have the power to help. Ah, great, now I have all this responsibility in my hands. The gang has to find a book that will help them solve the problem of the grumpy princess, so they magically select the story of the Nutcracker. In this version, we have a girl named Clara, who has a Nutcracker doll who can turn into a real prince. The Nutcracker Prince wants to take her to the land of sweets, but the Mouse King won't let them get there, because he's feeling super grumpy and doesn't want anyone to have any fun. Sound familiar? With the power of letters, they fly over the Mouse Army and get to the land of snow. The Mouse King thaws the land because he doesn't want any fun to happen, but with the power of spelling, they get the snow back. The Nutcracker then takes Clara to enjoy some music, but oh no! The Mouse King's at it again, and he stops the music. Looks like we need some reading power to change the story and get the music to play again. Now, what word could we use to get the music to play again? Oh, I know. How about starts?
Let's try eat.
Hey man, if you're just gonna ignore me, then why did you bring me along? Whatever, the Mouse King eats the music. Never mind the original story. I want to see where this one's going. They get the music to play again and discover that the reason why the Mouse King is so grumpy is that he ran out of cheese. A problem that I find incredibly relatable. So the kid suggests he start dancing to distract himself from his sorrows and be happy again. It works, he dances with everyone, and the story ends well. Thanks to this Nutcracker story, we learned a lesson. If you're grumpy, try dancing. The kids go back to their original dimension and try this trick on Sleeping Beauty, who shakes her grumps away and joins the party with everyone else. This version of the Nutcracker story tells you very little of the original tale. And it's also made for 5-year-olds. You get the very basic concepts, like Clara having a Nutcracker doll and the Mouse King being a villain. Throughout the episode, they also play bits and pieces of the ballet music tracks, so it makes sense that the lesson would be to dance your troubles away. That way, they have an excuse to play music, which works out nicely. The show itself reminded me a lot of playing edutainment CD-ROMs as a kid. My favorite aspect of the specific approach of this show is teaching text interpretation, and how to apply the things you learn by reading. Solving the problem within the story is one thing, but the real magic happens when you use that solution to fix the situation that brought you to the book in the first place. I mean, the real magic is also just kinda having magic. The princess has magical powers. And I'm stuck here with the power to help? How's that fair? In terms of this being a Nutcracker adaptation, I do wish they had dealt with more details of the Nutcracker story. What they had was a version of the Nutcracker edited to suit their specific situation, instead of the writers crafting a situation specifically so that it would fit better with the original Nutcracker tale. I understand why they made those creative choices, but I'm here for the Nutcracker part, not for the Super Y part. Sorry, Wyatt. If you or someone you know want to learn how to spell, this might help you out. As for me, I just wish they had finished writing the version where the Mouse King eats the music. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and you are a baby tiger. It's Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood in Neighborhood Nutcracker. I didn't watch this one as a kid, but I do have a feeling that if this was on while I was still part of the age demographic, I would have enjoyed it. The episode starts off with Daniel Tiger telling us what we are going to do. Today, we will go ice skating with Dad. Then, we will watch a performance of the Nutcracker Ballet. Daniel is very excited and can soon be seen playing in the snow with his friend. His dad comes along to pick them up and take them ice skating, but to get to the lake, they need to sled down a big hill, and Daniel is scared because it seems hard. That's when his dad chimes in with some advice for the day. If something seems hard to do, try it a little bit at a time. Inspired by this, Daniel and his friend walk halfway down the hill, making the path to the bottom shorter, and then they sled down just that little bit, which turns out to be quite fun. This gives them the courage to climb up the hill and slide down its full height. Then they get to the frozen lake, where Daniel will ice skate for the first time. He's scared of doing it, since it looks pretty hard, but his dad helps him take it easy and do it little by little, so he tries it a little bit at a time and discovers that it's quite fun. Daniel then takes us to a live-action segment where we see a real-life kid go ice skating, and the episode ends. Well, that didn't have anything to do with the Nutcracker. Oh, it's the next half of the episode. Okay. Daniel greets us by the door and tells us that he's going to see a neighborhood performance of the Nutcracker, and he's very excited. His mom then calls him over so that she can tell him the Nutcracker story. She explains that in the ballet, people dance to express what's going on, so she wants to read him the story so that he knows what to expect. Because when we do something new, let's talk about what to do. I love this because it's a very practical and concrete way of introducing the ballet to your kids. If they just watch the dance, they will be pretty confused because it's not an obvious or even conventional way of telling the story. And many of the ballet versions I've looked at during this month do that too. They have some guy at the beginning of each act telling you what the story is so that you can follow along. I feel like knowing the story beforehand greatly enhances your enjoyment of the performance, so kudos to this mom for teaching the story to her kid. In the tale, Clara has a Nutcracker doll that comes to life, so Daniel feels inspired to imagine himself dancing with his own toys as if they came to life, along with the characters from the story. It feels silly to have tutorials for kids on how to make believe, but I like this idea. It's teaching them how they can put themselves in the stories they read, or how they can incorporate the ideas they learn into their playtime. Daniel and his dad go to the venue where the ballet will take place, but Daniel's owl friend is afraid of going inside because the place is too loud. His friend's dad then says if something seems hard to do, they should try doing it a little bit at a time. Wait, I've heard this before. The owl takes it easy, and with Daniel's support, he decides to stay for the play. That's when Daniel's cat friend calls him backstage, and we discover that the kid who was going to play the Nutcracker is sick. The cat wants Daniel to fill in as the Nutcracker because, as she puts it,
But the show must go on, meow meow.
Daniel isn't sure about doing it because it seems hard, but his friend and her mom teach him the dance moves, which they practice by taking it easy and doing one step at a time. Daniel gains the confidence he needs to go on stage, and they present the play to all of their neighbors. We end this episode with a real-life segment where a kid goes to the theater where a performance of the Nutcracker ballet is happening, and she gets to talk to the ballerinas and walk backstage and watch the performance at the end. This is a nice way of sparking the kids' interest not only in the specific Nutcracker spectacle, but on the art form itself. What a wholesome little show. This is based on the principles and heritage of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and we all know how wonderful that series was. The lessons the characters learn in these episodes are useful in a life sense, as it teaches them to deal with tough situations, and they also throw in a little culture with the ballet as a bonus. The tiger design is cute! Look at him! Look at that little guy! I was also struck by the dad's voice in this. It's so calming and friendly. The mix of human and animal characters makes for some fun variety, and like I said, I enjoy the ways in which this show teaches kids to play pretend. This one is another case where the plot isn't so much about the Nutcracker tale, but instead about the act of watching the ballet. And I think the issue is dealt with very tactfully given the target audience, as it gives the kids a heads up on what to expect story-wise, and it also teaches the parents how to handle the situation. I've got nothing bad to say. This is one neighborhood I am proud to be a part of. Wonder Pets. Now that's a show I definitely watched. I was a tiny bit older than the actual target demographic for this, but as a kid I did go through a phase where I knew that what I was watching was made for younger kids, but I watched it anyway because it was just on TV. Having seen this a little older though, I remember being slightly annoyed at some aspects of the show, specifically the way the duck character would speak. She swapped her R's for W's, or rather for L's in the dubbed version, and I don't know if this was supposed to be relatable for any kids out there, but I just found it grating. I mean, she did it for every R sound. She just sounded like a mockery of children instead of an actual child to me. My sister and I even had like a mean version of their theme song that we would sing to make fun of them. Very I hate you, you hate me, you know? I did find it funny how their favorite snack was celery though. Good times, man. Good times. Lenny, Tuck, and Ming Ming too are class pets who go on special missions to help other animals. But this time they catch a break from superheroing because it's Christmas Eve. They dance excitedly on their way to the Christmas tree to check out their presents, except the tree is barren of decorations and has only a single present for them. When they open the box, they find a little Nutcracker baby doll and a single nut. They want to put the Nutcracker to good use, but a note on the present states that they can only crack the nut on Christmas morning. They feel crummy about their lousy singular gift and having to wait to use it, but then Tuck sings a song about being happy with what you have, and they all start to feel better. I don't really like that. Sure, it's nice to be grateful for what you have, and it's good to be aware of your blessings and privileges and stuff, but this message can so easily be twisted into toxic positivity. Like, you never have the right to complain about anything because you should just be happy with what you have. No, Tuck, sometimes you're 5 years old and your Christmas present sucks. It's okay to be upset about it. They each go to their little cage to sleep, but some Christmas magic awakens the Mouse King within a picture book, and he steals the Nutcracker doll. Now the pets have to get together and take it back. They put on their little outfits and hop onto the flying boat and are transported to the land of the Christmas picture book. This would be a good time to mention that this entire episode is a musical, with the characters singing all of their lines in tune with the background melodies. I think that was a bit of a standard for the show, but my memory might be faulty and I don't feel like watching other episodes to confirm it. The main difference is in this specific episode, many of the songs are instrumentals taken directly from the Nutcracker ballet and given new lyrics for the pets to sing. Some of it works, some of it is a little forced. They get a little creative with the rhymes here and there, but then they have this whole song where they keep singing tiptoe, 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 and it gets old kind of fast. It's a mixed bag for me, but I do think the results are mostly positive. If there is one thing that I've learned from watching all of these adaptations is that putting lyrics to the Nutcracker melodies is way harder than it looks. The probability of failure is bigger than the one for success. Some of these adaptations are really rough, musically speaking, so the fact that the Wonder Pets one managed to be just okay is actually a big win for them. They run around through some desserts, and they dance around with some dolls, and they hop around through some flowers, and if you're not charmed by the music or the cute pets doing cute stuff, then this is really boring. It looks like the Mouse King will succeed in stealing the Nutcracker as he is about to enter the safety of his castle, but then the pets start singing about how you should be happy with what you have, and about how the Mouse King already has heaps of great stuff and doesn't need to steal the Nutcracker. The Mouse King agrees and gives the doll back to the pets. This whole time, I was expecting some kind of plot twist, like the Mouse King only stole the Nutcracker because he had a tough nut of his own and needed help cracking it, or he was lonely and just wanted to have a friend for Christmas. But no, he was stealing the doll just because he wanted to steal something, and then they convince him that, in reality, he did not have to steal something. Sure. The pets get their doll back and they return to the classroom, where the sun is starting to rise upon the window, meaning they now get to crack their Christmas nut. When they do so, magical decorations appear in the walls, and their Nutcracker comes to life. They sing one last song together and the doll joins in for the dancing and even the singing. Merry Christmas. Yeah, I don't think this one's doing it for me. After watching other kids' shows tackle the Nutcracker theme, I was much more enamored with the lessons and teachings that the other ones brought than I am with this one. The big lesson of the show is teamwork, which is fine, but it pales in comparison to the complexity of text interpretation or social-emotional regulation. The fun here lies more in the music, but like I said, the lyrics are only okay. So I don't think this adaptation is bringing a lot to the table. Still, this might have been the first time some kid out there even heard of the Nutcracker, which is fun to think about. I'll leave this one to the kids. I'm sure there are some of them who will enjoy it. Super fit. There's no one better than a ballerina to tell us about the Nutcracker, so let's welcome Angelina Ballerina and her Nutcracker-themed episodes. On Angelina's Holiday Treats, there's an upcoming holiday presentation at Angelina's ballet school, and our little mouse girl has been picked to play the part of the Sugar Plum Fairy, while her friend Marco plays the tune for her to dance. The teacher says that after the show they are going to have a little cast party, and she asks the kids to bring a sweet treat for their get-together, so Angelina's mom helps the mouse girl bake a gingerbread house and some little gingerbread mice. Angelina and Marco are great fans of the cookies and eat like a whole box of them, and now they feel too sick to perform. Marco wonders what will happen if they are unable to put on the show, and Angelina replies,
Don't worry, I can always dance, no matter what.
which is a very unhealthy thing to say. I sure hope this kids show has some sort of moral about that. They get to the show and they feel really awful, but they perform anyway, and it's pretty bad. Margot is playing really heavily, and Angelina feels like she's dancing through thick mud. At the end of the show, everyone claps, and the teacher congratulates the kids for their performance, even if some of her students weren't at their best. Then everyone has some sweet treats, while Margot and Angelina vow to never eat that much before a show ever again. The end. Okay, so we're just gonna let Angelina think that she can dance no matter what? That's bad, and that really bothers me. I honestly thought she was going to get to the stage and ask an understudy to go on in her place, because she felt so bad. She looks visibly ill while dancing, and if I were a parent in that audience, I'd be super worried about the sick sugar plum. In terms of nutcrackerness, it feels appropriate to have an Angelina Ballerina episode about a Nutcracker performance. I mean, it'd be weird if they didn't have one. The Nutcracker is the ballet. But in the end, it's less about the Nutcracker and more about teaching kids not to eat too many sweets. Boring message, missed opportunity. On the next episode, called Angelina and the Front Row Ticket, Angelina's mom got her kid 2 front row tickets to see the Nutcracker, meaning Angelina can invite one friend to come along. But the mouse girl goofs up and invites 2 friends, and now she has to decide which friend will actually get the extra ticket. It's a tough situation, because if she decides on behalf of one friend, the other friend will be sad. Oh no! Okay, jokes aside, I like this setup more than the previous episode. That's actually something that might happen to a kid, whether it's because they made a mistake or because they were too nervous to decide. It's a complicated choice where one side will inevitably lose if you choose the other, and dealing with the aftermath of disappointing a friend is a valuable lesson that kids should learn one way or another. Except the decision Angelina makes just baffled me. Floored me. My flabbers were gasted, my bees were wildered, my dumbs were founded. Instead of choosing one friend to go with her to see the Nutcracker, Angelina takes herself out of the equation and gives away both tickets so that her 2 friends can go watch the ballet. Fully without her. No, this sucks. As a parent, I was straight up not allowed this. Front row seats aren't cheap, and I would have bought those tickets so that my kid could enjoy the show, not some random girl from her class or something. Her dad says that he's proud of her for making the quote-unquote grown-up choice, but that choice sucks. Angelina made an honest mistake by inviting 2 friends at once, and the punishment for that mistake shouldn't be missing out on the show completely. It's too big a consequence for something that, honestly, is not that big of a deal. It's a pickle, sure, especially when you're 8 years old or whatever these mice are, but the sacrifice she makes is unnecessarily heavy. Like, I'm sorry I'm getting so worked up over a show for children, but that's the point. Kids are using this show to learn about the world and how to deal with different situations, and I don't like what they're learning here. Am I crazy for saying I'm not a fan? Is the Angelina Ballerina fandom coming after me? The worst part? We don't even get to see the Nutcracker. Angelina gets an extra ticket at the end because of some plot thing, but we never get to watch the performance. Come on, that was disappointing to me specifically. I wanted to watch the mice dance. Also, both this episode and the one before it had musical numbers, and they were Nutcracker themed, but they weren't made with the songs from the Nutcracker. And also, the songs weren't very good. I remember liking the original 2D show as a kid. I wasn't an avid watcher or anything, but I did leave it on whenever I caught it airing. I cannot say I would do the same for the CGI version. The conflicts were boring, the lessons were skewed, the songs were bad, and frankly, I could have used a lot more Nutcracker. It's a bit weird to end on a sour note, but, well, there we have it. 24 media iterations of the Nutcracker, be them ballet performances, movie adaptations, a major part of the plot, or just something to get the gears going. Maybe they follow the story to a T, maybe they play it a little loose, or maybe they create a whole new universe. Either way, I love seeing how each adaptation puts their own little spin on things, and help keep bringing this extremely iconic story to life. Yep. That's all of them. Every single Nutcracker adaptation I could find. All of the big ones. All except for one. See you tomorrow. When I was 6 years old, I knew exactly what love was. Love was whatever these two crazy bisexuals had going on. Love was what they would sing about in Sanjay Jr. songs. Love was what I felt for my beautiful husband, Cubix the robot. And love was what allowed Clara to see past the invisible barrier set up by the Mouse King, trapping her dear Nutcracker on the other side. And although she could not see him or even hear him, she still felt his presence and smashed through the invisible glass, taking her beloved into her arms in a tight embrace. But I'm getting ahead of myself. One thing I have come to believe is that Nutcracker adaptations, especially the ones aimed at children, carry the potential merit of being someone's first introduction to E.T.A. Hoffman's tale, or to Tchaikovsky's music inspired by the short story. Not that the value of these adaptations is solely limited by the possibility of pointing towards the original work, but I appreciate the idea that it might spark the interest in something the child might never have thought to look into if not for the reimagining of this tale for a modern or younger audience. Barbie and the Nutcracker was my adaptation of choice. Released in 2001 by Mattel, it marks Barbie's debut as the protagonist of her own full-length CGI animated movie, and it was the first film in a massive and still ongoing series of productions, being as popular as they are profitable. I first became aware of this film because one of my classmates brought the tape to kindergarten one time, and the whole class watched it together. But being the girly girl that I was, I'm sure I would have been introduced to the Barbie cinematic universe one way or another as time went on. Still, I'm thankful to have that memory to hold on to, as it was a rather nice experience. After that collective viewing, I asked my mom for my own copy of the tape, and surprisingly, she said yes. Meaning I could now watch this movie over and over and over again for as long as I wanted to. And, dear viewer, I did exactly that. Barbie and the Nutcracker became a monumental staple in my house. I watched it and rewatched it and outgrew it but watched it anyway. I put it on as background noise during my teenage years. I watched it with friends in college. I watched it as research for a video. I started this December project because of it. So, what does this adaptation bring to the table? Is there a reason for such high praise, or is this just another forgettable direct-to-video mess? I invite you to come along with me as we investigate these and many other questions together, such as why is the dancing so realistic? Why is the voice acting so good? And why is the Nutcracker such a gosh darn hunk? I wanna talk about Barbie and the Nutcracker. We start off this movie, as Barbie films always did in the early days, with Barbie's supposedly little sister Kelly struggling to do something, and with Barbie chiming in to give her some advice. In this case, Kelly is trying to dance to the Nutcracker ballet, but she keeps messing up her steps and feels like giving up. Barbie then tells her that she has to be brave and keep trying, just like Clara from the story. Practice has now officially halted so that Barbie can tell her sister the Nutcracker tale, or really, Clara's tale. We first meet Clara as she stares into a snow globe, half lost in a daydream. In this version of the story, Clara and her little brother have lost their parents and are being raised by their strict grandfather Drosselmeyer, who is currently fussing over the dinner party that he is organizing. So, right now you might be thinking, oh, so Drosselmeyer has been changed into Clara's grandfather for this version. But I'm here to tell you that no, not really. Because although the grandfather might be named Drosselmeyer, the true Drosselmeyer of this tale is Aunt Elizabeth Drosselmeyer, who also carries the last name and who fills in for the magician godfather perfectly. With this being the first adaptation I ever saw, I was shocked to find that in the original tale and the ballet, Drosselmeyer is a man. That is because Aunt Drosselmeyer had such an air of mystery and excitement surrounding her that I couldn't picture anyone else in that role. She is the hot single aunt with a seemingly endless fortune and lots of free time, spending her days traveling around the world and then stopping by to bring the children eccentric gifts. Clara is very excited to see Aunt Drosselmeyer, since that means she now gets to hear all of her aunt's wonderful stories about the sights she's seen and the people she's met. Her aunt tells her about visiting faraway lands and even dancing with kings, stuff that Clara could only dream of doing. But her aunt suggests that maybe next time, Clara could come with her. Clara seems apprehensive, knowing that her grandfather would never let her do something like that. Aunt Drosselmeyer then shares the gifts she's brought for the children, giving Clara's brother a couple of toy soldiers and bringing Clara an intricate Nutcracker doll, which the girl is genuinely taken by. As a side note, a detail I really like about this Nutcracker design is how his arm serves as the lever that moves his mouthpiece. Dolls like these usually have a lever on their back which is used for that purpose, but switching it to his arm makes the design more concise and less clunky. Clara's brother immediately fights her for the doll though, and breaks the cool arm I was just talking about. So then Clara fashions a little sash for him out of a ribbon. We never really see the Drosselmeyer Christmas party, as when we cut back to Clara again, she has fallen asleep on the couch after the guests have left, like a child who stayed up too late. This helps bring a sense of innocence to her character, which adds some extra flavor to the conversation her aunt and grandfather are having in the living room. The grandfather thinks that Clara is much too young to be out getting into adventures, and the aunt argues that Clara is ready to take on bigger challenges and deserves to see the world. Clara's design points more to her being a young adult, but coupled with more childish mannerisms, such as falling asleep on the couch, makes it seem like both caretakers have a point in this discussion. Just as the clock strikes midnight, though, some magic sparkles start floating around the room, bringing forth an army of mice, and also awakening her Nutcracker doll, who now fights against the creatures, and the dialogue suggests that there's some history behind the two sides we're not entirely aware of. As the fighting escalates, in comes the Mouse King, who is voiced by Tim Curry. And here, I gotta give props to the man. It would be very easy for him to see this project as being beneath him and just cash in another voice acting check and go home. But no, this man is having fun with it. The Mouse King character is brought to life by him, and it's delightful to hear him through the animation.
You're telling me that the Nutcracker, a wooden utensil...
Clara wakes up and, upon seeing the battle taking place in her living room, does something she's rarely allowed to do in these adaptations. She tries to join in. She's holding up a vase to the Mouse King and is absolutely ready to squash the guy. However, the king has a magic scepter and utters a spell that shrinks Clara down to the size of her dolls. The battle rages on. The Nutcracker's fighting, the mice are micing, Clara tosses her shoe at the Mouse King and knocks him down, and now she's stuck being rat-sized. The Nutcracker tells Clara that the only way to reverse the Mouse King's spell is to find the Sugar Plum Princess, a mythical figure that he also happens to be looking for, because it turns out he wasn't always a Nutcracker. Although what his original form once was, he's not willing to share. A magical wooden owl gives Clara a necklace that will transport her back home in her normal size once she finds the princess. And now Clara and her Nutcracker are ready to step into the rat hole portal that will take them to the distant land of Parthenia. Once they arrive, they find themselves stuck in an icy cave, but luckily some snowflake fairies come along to help. They perform a little dance for our heroes, clearly shipping the two, I can relate, and they smash the wall of ice open, revealing a matte painting. Wow, this is not 3D at all. The Nutcracker and Clara aren't even moving, come on! As a very mysterious side note, when they step out of the cave, Clara's snowy footsteps gently melt away as flowers grow in each spot. And if you're wondering what type of flower that is, they're called blossoms of foreshadowing. Thanks to his bat informant / handman, the Mouse King learns that Clara and the Nutcracker have made it to Parthenia, so he sends his soldiers to capture the two. Our heroes are currently examining a village that was destroyed by the Mouse Army, and Clara is very much not patting that horse's mane. Oh my god, that looks so bad. They find some kids and are chased by the rats, but then they're saved by these two guys and their little refugee tree camp. These are Major Mint and
Captain Candy,
who agreed to aid the Nutcracker in his search for the Sugar Plum Princess, even though Major Mint is skeptical about the whole ordeal since this princess is no more than a legend. The Mouse King is also looking for this princess, as he is worried that this figure might actually have the power to defeat him. But even after searching through all of the kingdom's archives, he cannot find any information about her aside from a brief and vague description. We learn more about the backstory of this kingdom. Before the Mouse King took over, Parthenia used to be ruled by a kind and fair king, who left his son in charge after he passed away. This son is Prince Eric, who felt like he wasn't ready to rule, and so he let the Mouse Royal advisor in charge until he felt like he had proven himself worthy. Except the mouse liked the power a bit too much, and decided to take the kingdom for himself. The subjects hate the Mouse King, but they also look down on Prince Eric, thinking that he is a coward. But the thing is, no one knows what became of him after the mouse took charge. Most subjects are too bitter to care, and the Nutcracker states that Prince Eric was destroyed. But Clara knows better. With the anticipation of their upcoming journey looming over their heads, Clara can't bring herself to sleep, and finds the Nutcracker sitting by the edge of the treehouse camp, lit by the glow of the moonlight. The Nutcracker jokes that he doesn't need to sleep since he's just a wooden doll, but Clara tells him that she knows he is much more than that. Because he is Prince Eric. Stop the presses. I was flabbergasted, floored. 6-year-old me was sitting there, mouth agape, mind blown, G to the A to the double G-E-D. It's not a plot twist if you know literally anything about the Nutcracker. But I didn't. I was naive, innocent, a blank slate. And what an introduction to the lore that was. A prince under a curse. Delicious. I'm eating this up. Straight up crunching on that VHS. Legend has it that in order to find the Sugar Plum Princess, one has to cross the Sea of Storms. The merry gang walks along the path leading them to the beach. Major Mint almost kills that guy, but then the Nutcracker detaches his own arm in order to rescue him, and it's so creepy but also so sexy. I love how much this movie plays up the fact that the Nutcracker is, in fact, a living doll made of wood.
That was very noble of you.
Girl, what else was he supposed to do? Let the men die? The bar is really on the floor these days. In searching for supplies, the Nutcracker takes Clara to an old well where some spring fairies are trapped, and once they're freed, they engage in a little magical dance that brings the valley back to life. They are also very aggressively shipping those two, and I am absolutely into it. They come so close to holding hands, I am losing my frickin' marbles. The Mouse King brought a stone giant to life in order to stop the Nutcracker's mission, and now that the monsters caught up with the gang, it seems like there's no way they can escape. But the winter fairies from earlier appear just in time, freezing the Sea of Storms, allowing it to be safely crossed, and the horse from earlier also shows up to give them a lift. No matter how fast they race though, the stone giant is unrelenting in its pursuit, and the ice is too thick for the monster to crack it and sink. so the Nutcracker decides to give it a little push.
Be careful!
Don't worry, wood floats.
Hi, this is me, losing my mind. I've been losing it for 22 years at this point. Please send help. They cross the Sea of Storms and reach an island, but it looks like Clara is having second thoughts about finding the princess. An earlier conversation on the carriage also exacerbates this feeling, as it seems that Clara is less and less ready to leave the land of Parthenia behind. She also tried to convince the Nutcracker that he doesn't need the Sugar Plum Princess to prove himself, as he's done plenty of brave deeds entirely on his own, but he is also not fully convinced that he is worthy of ruling. The gang walks into the castle, but oh crap, it was actually a trap set up by the bat. Now, you might be wondering, how did they not realize that the castle was a painting? And to that I say, they're just very used to how sometimes their world is a matte painting instead of 3D, so this was just another Tuesday for them. Clara evades capture and hangs around the island, wondering if it's best to just go back home already. But she quickly snaps out of it, realizing her friends are counting on her. Just then, the spring fairies show up to offer her a lift, and she flies over the sea into the Mouse King's castle. God, I just realized they leave the horse behind. It's just stuck forever on that island now. Poor Marzipan. The fairies rally up the villagers, suggesting they just frickin' beat the mouse up, and the Mouse King prepares a ceremonial bonfire to burn the Nutcracker to a crisp. And then we get the scene. Clara tricks the mouse guards into leaving their posts and steps into the sealed room. She is shocked to find it empty, as she was sure this was where her friends were being kept. And it is. It's just that they've been placed behind an invisible barrier, which keeps the girl from seeing or hearing them. Clara thinks for a moment, wondering why the Mouse King would care to guard an empty room, and she carefully searches the dungeon, stumbling upon the barrier. Just then, the Nutcracker smiles, and it's almost like she can sense it somehow, smiling back at him, smashing the cursed glass and embracing him with all her might. This scene altered my brain chemistry. It shaped me into a different being. There is a before this scene and an after it. I was only 6 years old, but my world was changed forever. Back at the castle courtyard, all the villagers have gathered round, and there's like 30 people in here? I guess they couldn't afford many extras. The Nutcracker is ready for battle, parkouring down the walls and calling out the Mouse King, saying he will never be a ruler. The despot turns the villagers to stone and strikes at the Nutcracker, and a vicious battle begins taking place. The Mouse King makes himself bigger through magic and thoroughly beats the guy up. Just totally knocks him down. I'm on the edge of my seat here. Clara steps up to defend him, much like she did back at her house, but the Mouse King gears himself up for another spell, threatening to make Clara even smaller than she already is. At this, the Nutcracker musters up the strength for one last blow, using his sword to deflect the magic back at its origin, making the Mouse King curse himself. This takes out the Mouse King, but also the Nutcracker, who falls down in exhaustion. Clara frets over him, but he insists that he's not worth fretting over, to which she kisses him as she calls him a prince. And then, oh boy, did you think the bit about the Nutcracker being a prince was a plot twist? Get ready for this. Clara's kiss breaks the spell, transforming the Nutcracker back into Prince Eric. Which is weird, because only the Sugar Plum Princess should be able to break the Mouse King's spell. Except it's not weird, because Clara is the Sugar Plum Princess. She's just as confused as the audience, insisting that she couldn't be. But the prince reminds her of how, since the start of their journey, she has proven herself to be as kind, clever, and brave as the princess was rumored to be. And just to drive the point further, the entire land seems to be revitalized, glowing and flourishing as though awakened from a deep slumber. The real princess was within her all along. Does it make sense? Not really. Kind of. It does call back to the original story and ballet a bit, as Clara is crowned royalty there, but the Sugar Plum Fairy is mostly its own separate character. Which is why this movie is visionary. No one's doing it like her. 10 out of 10, no notes. All the villagers come back to life and everyone starts dancing, and Clara and the prince share a beautiful waltz together. Prince Eric asks Clara to stay and be his queen, and Clara says that this kingdom now feels like her true home. But just then, the Mouse King swoops in and steals her necklace, breaking it open, which sends Clara back to her house. She awakens in a frenzy, back to her normal size, and insists to her grandfather that the events of the previous night were all real, even though they sound like a dream. Worst of all, she can't find her Nutcracker anywhere. That's when Aunt Drosselmeyer strolls into the room, accompanied by a handsome young man who bears a striking resemblance to Prince Eric. As he gives Clara her lost necklace, his true identity is confirmed, and they share an intimate dance in the hall. And so, Barbie has finished telling her story, and Kelly feels inspired enough to give dancing one more try. She gets up and they practice the song from the top, and Kelly nails every step. The end. So, okay, hi. I'm obsessed. I've been obsessed since I was 6 years old. This movie is my Roman Empire. Modern Hollywood wishes it had what this movie has. The iron grip that this film had in my brain never relaxed, even after all these years. I kept wanting to talk about this movie and holding myself back, but it bled into my work anyway. The Nutcracker rambles I went on during my Barbie videos could have been half an hour long if I had no hinges left. I watched 24 Nutcracker adaptations just to get to this moment. I am chronically incapable of shutting up. The romance, the poetry. Both Clara and Eric had to go through this journey to reveal their true selves. Eric because he'd been cursed into hiding it and had never truly felt like himself before he learned he was in fact capable of being brave like he was in his travels. And Clara, who was stuck on the cusp of womanhood and independence, held back by society standards she didn't fully commit to, and who truly flourished by learning to trust herself. Both of them are kind and selfless, and think more highly of each other than they do of themselves. Clara had always insisted Eric was in fact just as courageous as he dreamed of being, but denies having that same fearlessness within. And Eric had always seen Clara as selfless and worthy, while being unable to see those same qualities in his own demeanor. When Aunt Drosselmeyer gifts Clara the Nutcracker, she says that he might look off on the outside, but on the inside beats the heart of a prince. And that's true for Clara as well, since she's been a princess all along. Not everything in this movie makes sense. There's this magical owl who's just like there, and it's never explained how she's connected to anything. There's no way of knowing how Aunt Drosselmeyer got the Nutcracker doll, or how she knew he was a prince, or how she found him at the end of the movie. But when she shows up with Eric by her side after the curse was lifted, you just trust her. Yes, Aunt Drosselmeyer is all that, and she would guide the prince back to her niece. We all wish we could be her. This movie is so intrinsically tied to the history of the Barbie cinematic universe that it's hard to discuss one without mentioning the other. It's so amusing to see them still working out the kinks and figuring out what kind of a story they wanted to tell. There's a rawness to this movie that other Barbie films don't really have. It lies in the matte paintings and the ugly side characters and the clunky CGI, and to me it just makes the final product even more easy to love. It is perfect in my heart, just the way it is. The idea of tying Barbie movies to the concept of ballet was so iconic. And Mattel really pulled no punches in this production, getting the New York City Ballet Master-in-Chief Peter Martins to do the choreography, using motion capture to record the movements of real-life ballet dancers in order to animate the dancing sequences. Ballet would become such a staple to the Barbie brand, especially in their movies, and it was flawless from the get-go. And as a Nutcracker adaptation, this slaps. It transforms these already established characters into their own people, with their own goals and conflicts and passions, allowing them to have action-packed and softer moments, and establishing a genuine connection between the two leads. The Nutcracker story hinges on the romance between Clara and the prince, and here it's so well constructed, in a way that these adaptations don't often flaunt. But even after all of that, you might be thinking it was kinda pointless of Barbie to spend 60 minutes telling her sister a story that had nothing to do with learning to dance as a way to get her motivated to practice dancing. And to that, I say, actually, this movie was about Clara learning to dance. When she first arrives at Parthenia, the snowflake fairies try to get her to copy their steps, but she's pretty bad at it. Later on, after she's gained some confidence thanks to her journey, the spring fairies make a similar attempt, and Clara's kinda getting into it now. This all culminates in when she becomes fully realized as the Sugar Plum Princess, because now she gets to take part in a flawless performance with her beloved. Turns out, the braver you are, the better you are at dancing. There is such love and passion and fun poured into this movie. It's a historical document, a masterpiece even. I have carried it with me all these years, and it brings me great joy to think of how many people shared a similar experience, linking us through time and space. This video is for them as much as it is for me. And if it's not this movie, then I'm sure a lot of people have their own little Nutcracker adaptation that they hold very dear to their hearts, and which introduced them to the world of the ballet, and to Tchaikovsky's wonderful music, or even to the original short story which inspired it all. I'm really glad to have watched all of these Nutcracker adaptations. I've been introduced to wonderful pieces of work that I would never have considered watching if not for this project. And the journey itself came from my genuine love for one of these adaptations. There is so much wonder to be gathered from these pieces, and I love to think of how each and every one of them are capable of bringing joy, entertainment, or greater respect for the original works. I hope I was able to introduce you to some interesting pieces, or to reminisce about their existence and the craftsmanship behind them. There are treasures everywhere if you know where to look. And sometimes, that place is a little VHS tape from 2001 that you watched in kindergarten and which has never left your brain. Thank you for watching. Wow, hello there. It was very nice of you to watch this video. Special thanks to my beautiful patrons for making videos like these possible. I would gift each of you a magical nutcracker if I were your godfather. If you have enjoyed the video, you can also help me out by clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the notification bell too. You can also follow me on Twitter and share this video with your friends. Check out my second channel too if you have the time. The link to all of those things will be in the description. Feel free to leave a comment down below, especially if it is about how much you love Barbie in the Nutcracker. We did it, folks. 25 Nutcracker adaptations. Or 26? Stay tuned for tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on my next video. Bye!
First of all, I was kind of astonished that she hadn't, you know, made a movie before, because she is a sort of world star. And I thought it was kind of flattering to be in her movie.